Alrighty. We are live with episode 5 of the Armchair Admirals and Generals podcast. Let's see. If I do that, Duck.
Hey, everybody.
In the app. Hold on, I'm just going to try one more thing.
Tree's a professional, guys. Don't let the start of this stream be indicative of his skills as a streamer and or host of a show be in any way reflective.
I mean, he did
on his
completely rebuild.
His normal streams. And
he did completely rebuild this.
Yeah.
In his hotel room on a second computer in a day. So I'm not giving him.
Well, I had some of the resources, but not all of them.
Out of Tira.
Well, and there's no way that Nightcob is going to give me the benefit of the doubt because that's not what he does. We know this.
That's exactly what I just did.
No slack. No slack at all.
None.
Yeah, you did it tongue in cheek with sarcasm dripping.
Oh my God! You know what? I didn't realize officers actually did pick up sarcasm. I'm not gonna lie, guys. That just changed my whole way of doing business. I didn't think they were picking up on it. Now I got to change my tone and everything.
You're gonna have to change your tone. Oh boy, I have so many things to say to you right now that I'm not because it's mean. Higher road.
Only previously enlisted officers. I agree, Northern.
Oh my gosh.
Well, so I rebuilt the OBS scene because I didn't have it saved on my laptop. I had some of the assets saved on my Google Drive, which is great. That helped. But so I had to rebuild it as best as I could, looking at the videos from the previous episodes. Like, okay, how did I have this arranged? But then I added in the stack up GIF on the bottom right as I'm looking at it, as well as the overlay thing on the top with stack up because was trying to get all the stack up stuff organized, and I've been talking with one of their reps for people doing charity stuff like we are here, and so I'm trying to get it all synced up and get some more awareness of that. But so bumpy start to the podcast, but it's to be expected because if you haven't watched Pathfinders or Lore Equals gameplay in the last 2 weeks, you might not be aware that I am doing this out of my hotel room in San Antonio, Texas. Biker Scout 07, how you doing? Del Kenobi 07. I'm on active duty orders right now because unlike these other two fine gentlemen, I am not active duty. I'm a Army National Guard flight paramedic, and I'm away from home for a 2-month-long course, potentially another 1-month-long course after that. But this is Armchair Admirals and Generals, where a few Star Citizen content creators who enjoy the game but also are current and active military. We talk about Star Citizen, aspects of Star Citizen with a little bit of influence gained from our service, sprinkled in here and there just to help color our perspective. And with me, I have my two partners in the podcast on the, I guess it would be this hand. There we go. Down here below me on my right is...
Let's see if he remembers my name this time, even though it's on the screen.
Is Nightcob. Nightcob, can you tell everybody a little about yourself?
Yeah. So 16 years, active duty submarines. Currently working on some shore duty and trying to get back to sea. Right now I stream on Twitch and occasionally put out a really, really, really crappy YouTube video. That was a real effort, actually, not to swear there.
That's okay. I think we're okay on Twitch. I think it's the YouTube that'll get you demonetized. I don't know how.
Yeah, but you can turn these into YouTube videos later, man.
Does it? Right? Oh, I didn't know if. Oh gosh, I didn't even think about that. I always do that. I don't know. Well, and I'm not monetized on YouTube yet, so.
I know. Well, I'll try and keep it as clean as possible, but I don't hold out a lot of hope there. And Atira already knows that's probably not going to happen, but it is what it is. Anyway, yeah, that's what I do. On to
Cool.
Atira.
Yeah, and Atira Kel, for the new people who are watching right now and will be watching, if you'll just introduce yourself for us.
I'm Atira Kel. I'm a active duty Army officer. I have 21 years of active service, both as an armor officer and as a military intelligence officer. And you can find me at YouTube/Atira Kel, where me and my friends sometimes Night Cobb. I don't know if I put him in the friend category with all the snark.
Did you hear the smug in his voice though as he started that off? All I introduced myself was a 16-year active duty submariner. He's like 21 years officer. All right.
Cheers, pleb. Anyway,
This is our
And
dynamic.
he's not a friend.
so
That's what I got out of Atira at the beginning of the stream.
So anyway, yeah, so YouTube/Atira Kel. We do Star Citizen when it works. Right now, I'm getting the what is it? The 60,000.
Are you a 40K?
I'm a 60,015. So when I try to log into a server, I get immediately kicked out, and I haven't figured out a way to get around it. I tried like 6 times today, and I couldn't do it. Yeah, and we're working on. We have an Empyrean server up right now. We've done Conan. We do. Basically anything science fiction or fantasy, we'll give it a hack. Usually give it a try. Yeah, that's me.
And I apologize if there's skips in the upload. The bandwidth in the hotel is actually pretty good. It's just it's inconsistent. It'll be good, and then drop.
Yeah, I can only handle so much of Atira's ego. So.
But yeah, so this episode, if you saw the Twitter post or my post in the Discords putting it out there, it's called The Thrill of the Hunt. And I came up with this sort of vague idea and threw it out to the guys because I do the Lore Equals gameplay streams where I look at the Galactopedia updates and a few other things, spend a lot of time looking at the Arc Star map and reading, I enjoy the lore. But then also with what Nazareth and I do over at Pathfinders, we look at the development of different aspects of Star Citizen. And I got this idea when I was looking at the Pyro and Nyx systems in particular on the star map and reading about the lore of them. And then thinking about how scanning and exploration, will work, and then also looking at the quantum system and all the AI stuff is turned together. And I got to thinking, I was like, okay, so when you think about it, the space is kind of like the ocean, especially when you have the under the waves aspect of it. And if you're a pirate in Pyro, or Nyx or a similar system, you're trying to put yourself in a position to, you want to know where your prey is. You're trying to find out where they are and how they're going to be traversing the system, and you want to put yourself in a position of advantage where you will see them coming. You'll have a tactical, strategic advantage over them. Have the element of surprise without giving away your own position. I was like, that's, to me, that sounds a whole lot like what, Shadow Dog or Ghost Dog. But to me, that sounded a whole lot like, kind of how submarines operate, and from my very civilian, layman's perspective of submarines. And I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to ask Night Cobb and see what he thinks about, the whole lying in wait and, maneuvering, in the deep, deep black of space, the deep blue of the ocean, and how those things might relate given what we know about the development of certain systems in Star Citizen. And then on the back end, I was thinking about, if you remember the May 2021 quantum presentation from 20Z, he talked a lot about how bounty hunters might track down pirates and ne'er-do-wells, and going different places in order to try and get information, in order to, track them down, narrow down your search. And I was like, that's totally intel gathering. And I have a friend, well, whether he calls me a friend or not, who is a intel officer.
You're good. I can't shit all over Marines, man.
But
I'll use some crayons later.
Yeah. But like I remember, from my infantry days, we did do a lot of stuff with Intel in terms of trying to get them pieces of intelligence that they could use in planning for different operations. And whether you're planning on doing mercenary work or bounty hunter work in the verse, those sorts of things might be very applicable to what we would be doing in Star Citizen. I was like, this would make a great episode. And so we put our heads together. We started talking about that, making some notes, and we've got an unfortunate, a Google Doc that, of course, is black text on white, and it's blinding us all. But it is what it is. So yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Before we launch into it, I just want to remind everyone that all content that I do here on my channel, and then hopefully I'll be getting over 1,000 subs on YouTube pretty soon. I'm getting pretty close. I'm nearing 900. It all goes to charity. And so, when the ads come up, that money, from you watching the ad goes to charity. If you subscribe, to me here on Twitch, that money goes to charity. I just got my second payout a couple weeks ago from the different sub monies. And I made that donation. I posted it on Twitter. I'm going to get another payout here in a couple weeks probably. So I'll match that with some of my own money up to $100. So we'll add that to the total. And those will get reflected on the thing that's above my head here pretty quickly. I just had to reach out to stackup.org to get that adjusted. And then if you want to just donate directly to stackup.org, if you do that, there's a little Twitch charity thing. I'm looking at it on my tablet. I don't remember where it is if you're watching on computer. But there's the Twitch charity thing. You can do that. And I still have to troubleshoot the... oh gosh, what's it called? It's like Stream Alerts, but it's for charity, where I can do the chat commands in order for the information about...
Stream Elements?
They're all in a category, and I forget what they're called, but they're part of the Twitch integration. But I have to get that dialed in. But yeah, so if you want to support StackUp.org and their mission to connect active military and veterans with video games and gaming communities, to help treat PTSD and the issues that come along with being separated from your friends and family back home, like I am right now. We would really appreciate it. That's why we're all here. We're really passionate about that mission. And I'm trying to remember who, I think, oh gosh, I'm brain farting, but one of the viewers recommended that because we've been trying to figure, we've been batting around the idea of adding a fourth, creator to the mix. And so I reached out to Sergeant Tickles because he was recommended to me. He's a Air Force veteran. I don't know his background. I reached out to him to see if he'd be interested in joining us. And then where I need to redo the whole OBS scene to accommodate a fourth guest. So I'm going to get to work on that. And then we'll probably do another episode beginning of next month. And
we don't know if we've got room for a fourth, but we'll try and squeeze you in.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
I don't know if the sarcasm meter can take it.
We'll see if Nightcob has enough sarcasm bandwidth to handle that. An extra phase.
Oh, friend.
I mean, do you really want to bring a member of corporate America onto this podcast? I mean,
his name's Sergeant Tickles. If he doesn't know what he's already signing up for coming on here, shame on him at that point. All right, you can't have a username like Sergeant Tickles and not be ready for snark.
I more or less concur with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Kale Katarn, if you're watching now or watching later, we would love to have you, and we'll definitely get you on the podcast once I get everything set up and we get our next episode planned. So I'll reach out to you and get you in on the planning process, and that way you can get your daily dose of snark from Nightcop as well. So yeah, let's launch into it. So the first part is going to be more geared towards the piracy aspect. She cannot take much more, Captain Ghost. So
it's so true.
I was thinking what we would do is Atira and I would ask Nightcobb questions about sub operations and how that might relate. We'll sort of frame them in the perspective of the Star Citizen universe and how subs operate, how that might influence what pirates can do to be successful, to not scare away the prey. And so I think the first thing that I wanted to ask you about is, given that space is really vast and a lot of it is very open, kind of like how the larger oceans and everything are, how might that compare with what you do on a submarine, as far as you're traversing the Pacific, traversing the Atlantic, and you don't want to, you've got this big open space and you don't want to give away your position. What sort of strategies or tactics, and if it's classified, by all means, but how might what you guys do relate to what pirates could do when crossing Pyro to get to where they want to be, to operate, for example?
Got.
I just want to phrase, when you said classified, you were like, by all means. By all means, don't.
Yeah, by all means, don't. Yeah, let's not pull what is it, World of Tanks? Or
this is not DCS or what? No, it's not actually. DCS is the one with the problem. It's War Thunder.
It was World of Tanks.
This is
War Thunder.
No, it's War
War Thunder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they have
this isn't War Thunder.
Combined arms. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You're about to get that promotion. We don't want to screw it up for you.
No. I'll keep it the obvious low intel stuff. So the big thing, and I've kind of talked about it before with submarines, that would be similar, right? It is a vast ocean. So yeah, you can, obviously everybody knows, sonar is what you use to try and detect other submarines and even other submerged contacts. And you can obviously use it for surface contacts from underneath the water and on the surface. The tricky thing about submarines, I guess, kind of similar to your analogy, would be that, in the vastness of the ocean and with lacking, line of sight visibility and things like radar, because radar doesn't work in that scenario, your best bet for pointing yourself in a direction to look, because it's too vast of an ocean to just, drive around with sonar. Sonar has limited range. You've got the whole idea of like shadowing, depth layers, all that jazz, things that everybody knows about, like, and similar, to Star Citizen would be just, okay, well, if a 360-degree ping was all you got, and it had a limitation to it, like you can ping out to 360 degrees, but it's not a good ping. The odds of finding a contact at a certain distance with that ping, because you're searching such a wide area, is low. You would want to focus your efforts and try and get a more accurate representation of a given area of space. Well, with the vastness of space and the vastness of the ocean, what you're really relying on is your best guess. And your best guess, I hate to say it, it's a big cheat. It's, well, where were they last surfaced? Where were they last known to be? What are the likely places for them to go? Like, what have we known them to do in the past? Where does it make sense for them to go? We will start by looking for them there. What is their standard mode of operation? So the way I relate it to Star Citizen, and I don't know if you guys watched the Mongrel Squad videos. Do you guys watch them? They're like
I have watched a few of them. Yeah.
Group.
Yeah, and Mongrel Squad was on Space Tomatoes podcast a while back, and they made some really good points. So if you haven't watched that podcast, I would recommend going and checking it out, because they're the way they operate is very intelligent.
Yep. Well, similarly, right? Their big thing is they essentially use scouts, and that's not far off from what we do. I mean, granted, it's, as Atira will probably talk about later, right? It's a collection of intel picture that basically you are privy to, and you basically say, okay, well, I know where this person was the last time they exposed themselves, because we live in a world of satellite imagery, human intelligence. Like, that's not a secret to anybody and all that kind of stuff. So, the bottom line is, the way you stay hidden as a submarine is you run silent, you run deep under the water where satellites can't look at you. And it's one of the premier ways to hide yourself. So your best bet in Star Citizen would be, okay, I'm out in the middle of the black where nobody will look for me. Mm-hmm. That keeps you hidden to start. But ultimately, right, from on the pirate side and those that are hunting the pirates, the way that you reveal yourself primarily is by going to a location where you can be seen, or you are more likely to be seen. So, you go to Brio's breaker yard, or you go to a landing zone, or you go to, a common place to pick up cargo, something along those lines. You have to know that you're exposing yourself so that somebody could find you, and then make a logical best guess about where to look for you next. And if they observe you long enough, then they can make a better educated guess, maybe better educated enough to figure out how to place a, quantum snare in a given location. Sorry. Ghost Dog's unhappy.
Oh no, poor Ghost Dog wants to be on the camera.
I know, she knows. It's like she knows. She's like, "Are you on camera? Please.
Can I say hi to your friends?
Please, please, please." Yeah, exactly. That's
her. I'll let you take your turn here in a second, but I wanted to sort of like highlight two things that you said that I thought were really interesting. When you talked about going deep, I think one thing that a lot of players will make the mistake of doing is flying through space along the ecliptic, where the majority of traffic will be in order to get to their destinations, and staying, even if they don't follow the same ley lines, from one place to another, they go off and like this. By just making that small deviation, that might not give you the separation you need from people who are looking from you. But people forget that space is three-dimensional, just like for if you're of the silent service, the sea is three-dimensional for you compared to if you're on the surface navy. And I think a lot of people will make the mistake of not flying below or above the ecliptic in order to get to where they want to go and avoid a lot of like the scans that you're talking about, or to like Ghost 1800 brought it up in chat, the comm stations. We don't know if there will be things that the pirates are operating in Pyro that take that sort of replace comm stations from Stanton. We don't know how that's going to work, but there could be devices that the pirates have out in their areas around the stations that they control, because we know that some of the stations, besides Ruin, are controlled by the different pirate organizations, and they may operate comm stations or some sort of other sensor platforms. If those are all sort of in a orbit around the station they control, but maybe not so much in the vertical sense,
they're all on the same axis essentially.
Yeah, that could be a really good way to
there's an easier way to do
detection.
that, though. I think the reason people don't get off the Eclipse or the ecliptic is because they have to slow boat it up. This is not 2.6. You can't just jump into quantum drive at any point and go straight up, right?
Yep.
You have to slow boat it up. So the middle ground there is to go halfway to another planet and stop, and then change course and go where you're actually trying to go.
Oh, and with the quantum travel refactor, we should be able to do.
It might help.
Yeah, that a lot easier.
That'll help a lot.
I think it's going to be a hard habit for a lot of us to break, and I think because the majority of the other thing is the majority of the things in the star system are on the ecliptic. The planets and moons. Some of them are off to varying degrees, but you could go well.
It comes back to players only have a certain amount of time, and they want to. And this cargo drivers too. They want to go as fast as they can from point A to point B to turn profit.
Yep. And as Akira knows, what that does is it builds you into a routine. And the moment that you adopt a routine, you make yourself basically a target for intelligence gathering.
Absolutely.
Get ahead.
Absolutely. Now,
God.
Sorry. We'll get there. He's going to go into more detail. At least I hope.
I will. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I do want to follow up though, Nightcap. But most of the stuff you're doing on a submarine is passive, correct?
In terms of
looking for bad people or the opposition or for
the detection part,
right? So
yes.
So this is one of the things that's kind of frustrated me a little bit about Star Citizen, and that's every ship has its signature. And we do have some level of passive. Well, I feel like our passives should be a little bit more effective, I guess. And I don't know how you balance that, but
I
you
think
don't
they're
have to
incredibly
ping.
effective.
You think so?
Actually, I want to degrade them.
Okay.
Well, here, this
I
goes
guess
back to
I think about it
detectability.
900 years in the future, and I think about what a passive antenna listening would be able to do 900 years from now compared to the crap we have today.
Well, so I'll talk about that real quick. I meant to talk about this earlier. I'm glad you brought it up. So here's my struggle with passive sensors that I feel like Star Citizen could be potentially missing out on a good opportunity. Right now for sensors, you get full 360. And I say 360, keep in mind, like you said, three-dimensional. But bottom line is every axis away from your ship, you have full visibility essentially on passive sensors. Then not only that, but if I throw out a ping, I get, on a 360-degree ping, I essentially get the entire bubble around my ship. What I've never liked about that corresponds to kind of submarining in real life, right, is you never get the shadowing that is inherently present by the fact your ship's engines, and honestly to a degree, but much less so, your ship's engines should really affect that. Bottom line is that should create basically a distortion bubble where your sensors are not effective. Like it's why planes even these days, right? Their radar is in the nose of the plane typically, and it is angled out in front of them in a cone. And, even if you could rotate the radar 180 degrees to try and see if somebody was coming up behind you in a plane, like you would have to accept that the noise and distortion from your engines that they will inherently make, because you've got not only using it as propulsion, most engines are also tied to a generator in a plane anyway, right? So you're generating electricity and propulsion at the same time. That is going to create a field that is going to distort most sensor suites. And that works that way on submarines. You guys have heard it in movies and stuff before, like when you talk about somebody's in your baffles. Baffles are just the cone in the rear of the ship that is essentially blind because your engines, your propulsion systems are essentially destroying your detectability with your own onboard sensors in that cone, that arc. So ultimately, where you're the most vulnerable is, the rear of the ship, where your main engines are. Now, retros are kind of an interesting thing. I would love it if, man, we got the level of detail. This is asking a lot of Star Citizen, so I don't expect to ever get this, by the way. But I would love it if that's how it kind of married up with real life is. If your retros are firing, maybe you're sacrificing some sensor, or you're suffering some sensor degradation in the front temporarily. Or if you're heavy into the maneuvering thrusters, maybe you're just overall not picking up targets at longer ranges because you've got a lot of thrusters firing, providing a lot of distortion. You're going to pick up less passive signals, or at the very least, you're going to pick them up at a much. You're going to stop picking them up at a longer distance. So maybe the guy that would be detectable to you from a longer range as you're coming up on him while he's just driving in a straight line, and you're coming at him from perpendicular, you're off to his starboard side, maybe he picks you up at 10 kilometers if he's just flying in a straight line doing nothing. But if he's in a dogfight and he's jinking all around the place, utilizing his 6 degrees of freedom, and he is burning all of his maneuvering thrusters, mains, retros.
Freedom?
Say again?
You said freedom.
Did I say freedom? 6 degrees of freedom. I apologize.
Freedom. It's yourself. I just wanted to highlight that it was fantastic.
Freedom.
It's a new resource that's going to be in 3.19 for the mining update.
Look, that's what we produce in America instead of steel, my friends.
That's right. That's an American resource. Freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah, I don't sweat sodium. I sweat freedom. If you lick me, I taste like freedom when I'm at the gym.
That's right.
No, but that's actually a really cool.
Woo.
Tree just earned himself an OnlyFans account.
I know he did.
No,
it's called Freedom. Freedom.onlyfans.
That's a really cool idea, though. Is if you are maneuvering, or even if you're flying in quantum, having your visibility on sensor profile, significantly shrink, not because you're taking power away from it, but because you can't reliably your reliability score for anything beyond
We don't have
maybe.
anything on sensors in quantum anyway.
Well, I think that's
True.
more of a limitation of the game, but I think like going forward, whether you're in however you're traveling, if you're creating, throwing out all sorts of, electromagnetic interference because you're burning your thrusters, or you have a quantum field engaged, I think that's a really great way for them to balance that gameplay. You're moving fast and you have momentum and maneuverability, but you have less visibility versus someone who's sitting there passive. But at the same time, that person is more vulnerable because they're not moving. And so you could, however you want to dial that between regular maneuvering and quantum maneuvering, whatever. But I think that'd be a really cool way to implement something like that, especially for smaller ships
NPCs
compared to larger
have this
ships.
problem too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because I'll tell you what, we can't have perfect NPCs that get no interference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because of these things, if they're going to apply it to us.
Yeah.
Yep. So back to your original question, though, Atira, about active versus passive. So yes, the big thing, and I hope they keep. I'll be honest with you, I don't know if it's still a thing. I've tried to test it, and I can't tell the difference with the current state of the game. Like you just said with the NPCs, they're kind of wishy-washy. But if you're doing like space bounties, right? The idea would be if I'm in an eclipse and I'm running up against ERTs, the last thing I would want to do would throw out an active ping, because if I threw out an active ping, I just gave away my position.
Where you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They should know exactly where I am at that moment. And the big problem with that is I think it used to be functional. I used to see it on other people's radars or on my own radar from players. When somebody would throw out a ping, you'd see a little
blue
bubble
ring
on your radar.
Yeah.
You'd see the blue ring bubble go on your radar.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'd be like, ooh, there's a player pinging over there. And I'd go that way.
And I hate that mechanic. But I think there are other ways they could do that mechanic. And I think it comes down to a visual on your radar bubble that is a bearing.
Yes, I agree with you.
Right? Because I think the idea that your suit generates the blue wave for you and you can see that, I think that's stupid. But if you're paying attention to your radar and you see a little wedge appear,
instead of giving you a circle on the radar, it just gives you an arrow.
Because remember in the early ping, right, a big wave would come off the ship, and it was ridiculous, big blue wave.
Yeah.
Instead, on your little ball, you get a little 3-dimensional, inside the ball, a little 3-dimensional ping that says somebody from that, because it's part of the UI, that a ping was that way. You don't necessarily know how far, but you know the direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and so it's just intel. And I'll talk about why that would be really good later.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you. I think it was a little too obvious in terms of UI.
Yes. Oh, yeah. All right. So, okay, I'm going to ask a follow-up question, and I want you to be very broad, because I know that the real answer is probably inappropriate. So you could say a lot or little, something silly. So when you go from like the passive listening, which is what we do most of the time in Star Citizen, to banging away, right? You are looking for a sonar contact, active sonar. You're going to target somebody. You're going to shoot something at them, right? How much further are you seeing across, what are you getting? A lot more range in how far you can see, or are you getting a little bit more range? And I say this from the perspective of, in Star Citizen, should a ping be more than effectively maybe 20 kilometers, right? Oh, there's Ghost Dog. There he is. He's adorable.
Yeah.
She's adorable. Is it she, right?
Yeah,
she's so pretty.
I know, sweetie.
Oh, makes me miss my doggo. Doggos.
Because
you see her trying to pet me. She's like, your nails are sharp.
You're a good boy. You're a good boy.
Yeah, I know, right? She's upset because she's not getting any attention. So let's see. I'm gonna try and run this through a brain filter.
Yeah, run it through the brain filter. Should we see a lot more? Should we see only a little bit more?
So I'll put it in terms of this and what I think Star Citizen should be like.
Okay, I like it. Let's do that.
What I think is in Star Citizen, if you throw out active pings, what you should get are more accurate locations of readings within the same range that you have passive sensors for. So what you're doing when you throw out an active is not giving yourself a broader location. And this is kind of where the fail is in terms of passive sensors. And I think what I was kind of trying to allude it to, I just didn't say it clearly. Passive sensors should give you they're around this area, but I don't have an exact bearing. Active sensors are what you use to determine, it's not just a amorphous cloud of
noise.
It with a potential signature right there. There it is. I've got something in there. And they kind of did that for a while, right? And don't be wrong, there's a range which the passive sensor just like suddenly wins above all noise, and you're just like, there's a target. I never even had to throw out a ping. And
sure,
my problem with that is you have to throw out a ping to get the amorphous, and then you have to dial it in.
Right.
I think it should be the other way around. It should start
the other way around.
Yeah, you should just already have the amorphous cube. The dots, the little dot things with a box.
So I feel like that would overwhelm the HUD when you're in a place, and maybe they could do that when they.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because like if you're in an asteroid field, how would you be able to just even make sense of what's on your radar with all that feedback?
It'd be chaos. But I think if you bring in the new different radars, and the radars become an independent component, you have some radars that are tuned only to see ships, or they're best tuned to see that. And so you're not going to see a lot of that clutter. And then you have other radars that are tuned to see rocks and help you find rocks. So when you go into that field, you're overwhelmed, but you know what you're looking at because you're specifically looking for rock formations. Yeah. And then I don't know how you do salvage. I don't know. I mean, maybe salvage is actually a ship radar, but different because it's looking for something different. I don't know, but No, I get what you're saying though, Night Cobb. That makes a lot of sense to me. Is that you start with a whole lot of amorphous, and then the ping brings it right to what you want.
Yeah. And that should be the trade-off, right? And honestly, so now they're talking about you can take ship components out, and what I've noticed is radars are components.
Yeah.
On some of the newer ships, like that's actually a thing that you can go to a component bay and it comes out. They haven't started making variable component radars yet, but man, I'm dreaming of the day where that gets added to the list. I hope it does, because it would be really great to make us invest in trade-offs where it's like, this radar, size 1 radar, has a really great passive sensor, but it doesn't have a good active sensor. So, you can't scan well. And I think that should go along with active radar, active pinging, right? It doesn't have a good scanner. It doesn't have a good active ping, or maybe it's got a limited range on active ping, but you've got better passive abilities. So you might detect more information as a whole without giving yourself away. And that would be like an ideal one to have in an Eclipse, but
better filters or something, for information. Yeah.
Yep. And maybe that is the case. Maybe you have specific radars. Maybe you got a generic one that most ships start off with, but then you can buy like, this is a better salvage radar. It's better at picking up ship hulls, ship materials, and so on and so forth. And maybe it's got even an added bonus of like, makes it also actually really good at picking up other ships. Maybe it's got a really crappy, scan that's limited in what it can pick up. Maybe the scan's not good for picking up weapon details or shield components, or what the specific loadout of the ship is that you're coming across, but it's really good at picking up what kind of materials it's constructed from, or whatever.
It's good at seeing the ship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that we have to make compromises on that kind of stuff.
So
what are your thoughts on? Oh, go ahead, Tree.
Well, so remember, it was a while back. They had that video where they were showing how if you could hide a ship behind an asteroid, or you could hide a ship behind a ship, or if you have a cluster of ships, you wouldn't be able to differentiate between what they were until you got close enough. Based on your experience, how realistic is that? Like how what in in submarines, say you're not operating, out in the wide open ocean, but you're closer to shore or land masses or something like that. Do you use obstructions to hide your signals? Is that a thing?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I guess what I'm asking is how
And
much do
more
you
importantly,
think?
it's something.
Oh, I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say it, like they're within, say, the Pyro system, there's only the one asteroid field, but that we know of. There's the Akuro cluster. We know that there's going to be Lagrange points like we have now in Stanton, which will have some asteroids, some gases and everything. And we know that those are designed to interfere with your sensor abilities. I don't know how much it plays into it right now, just because I haven't messed with it, but I know that's part of the design. How much do you think that should play into, say, comparatively, like with Nix, where Nix has two large asteroid belts like the Aran Halo, with one of which has basically a gas cloud all the way through it, all the way around the system. It's a nebula. How much do you think that should degrade sensors, both active and passive?
It should degrade passive sensors to a large degree. And what I like about it, it should still degrade active too, just not as much. What I like about that though is, and I think it should be definitely a thing. Like I think, the radiation storms in Pyro and, the various environments.
Yep.
Yeah. And I honestly, my big problem with asteroid fields these days is I feel like it's still too easy to detect a ship in a dense, if you're in the asteroid field around Yella, you should have to get close. You should have to search. And not only that, but you should have to like potentially compromise your own location by throwing out a ping to try and differentiate more asteroids from ship hidden amongst asteroids, because it's very much a thing in real life. In terms of the submarine thing, we call it high contact density. When you have high contact density, it creates a lot of noise. It creates a lot of shadowing. Especially when you're passive sensors, you are basically dependent on how you position yourself, how they're positioned to triangulate and verify one contact versus three, two contacts versus one. And then not only that, but if they're close to each other, what it's really hard to do is figure out, okay, well, I've got two contacts, but I can't, with the shadowing and what's going on, I can't figure out what one is doing versus the other. So I can't get a good bearing and a measure of intent for one contact versus the other. This one might be coming straight at me. This one could be cold and flying away. I don't know. Like when there's a high enough contact density and I don't have good sensor picture. So the idea for me would be passive sensors only provide you so much. And if you want with interference, it should be double, triple, quadruple. So the good news is about that is a sword that should always cut both ways. So if you're looking to hide, that should be a refuge. That should be to your advantage too. And the goal would be to try and position yourself in such a way that you maintain the advantage of being able to maintain a passive sensor on them, or at least a better sensor picture on them, while making it as hard as possible for them to achieve the same on you. And that would be the idea of, like, I'll use something real basic. It gets a little bit more murky, pun intended, if we're talking about like in a gas nebulous cloud or Lagrange point. Yeah, nebulous. There you go. I love that word. But in an asteroid field, it's all about, you might be able to find a position where an asteroid shadows you, but you can maintain track on a target. And that would be your goal. Like what provides you the best line of sight for your sensors, while at the same time providing you the best shadowing. Now,
do you think that should apply to not only your, I forget what the terminology they use, but remember with the missiles, how you have missiles that will lock on to a radar signature versus
cross section
the cross section, as well as like, your, let's just say your electromagnetic signal, the thrust coming off your thrusters, the energy coming off your power plant. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, that was what it sounded. Yeah, go ahead.
So the difference though is, I think as a sub, you're not searching for an electromagnetic necessarily output.
Correct.
I mean, you probably can, but really what you're looking for is sound in the
sound is
water that you like. Sound is king, right?
Yep.
So
I guess the surrogate for us would be the electromagnetic signal.
Yeah, sound
is the
doesn't travel in a vacuum.
EM signal, which is not necessarily. Now, you could hide behind a rock, but if the pirate or the target or whoever is not hiding behind a rock, there's no reason, or there's no, because the rock is just inert. So I could argue that like it should be degraded. Maybe it's bouncing around a little bit, but I don't think it should be significantly degraded.
See, I was thinking if for like you can't get the cross section.
I don't know.
You won't get the cross section return.
Right. So it depends, right? And that's
radiating.
Another thing the radars could be good at. The radar could be really good at seeing cross sections, or it could be really good at seeing an EM and seeing that, or it could be really good at seeing. You might have a different sensor altogether, because let's be real, it's a different sensor altogether that can see thermal, right? Because a radar doesn't see thermal.
And it is that right now, right in Star Citizen.
And now you have all
you
three.
Can see IR, EM, cross section, what you output, and ideally what the shipset would. But I think that's kind of broken right now. But you're totally right. And what you're talking about is, yes, what you would be limiting in the asteroid field example would be your ability to pick up on cross section in terms of radar. You can further limit. So that's where the gameplay aspect comes in, where it'd be like the submarine analogy would be, okay, well, I'm in deep water. Ooh, brain filter. Yeah. All right. So bottom line, there's thermal layers. There's thermal layers in water, right? Sure.
Absolutely.
Different density of water at various temperatures. So depending on thermal layers and stuff like that, right? It's kind of like being in a gas cloud or a nebulous cloud. You achieve some other measure of counter detectability. So you've got that part of it. Well, there's the other part of it is I need to be quiet. Like that's the other function is I track sound in a submarine. So that would be another way in which I would, and that's how I track others. Let's be as quiet as possible. Let's alter our machinery lineups. Let's, run a given set of, or turn off a given set of equipment that changes my capabilities, but at the same time, it provides better counter detectability. So I'm balancing. This goes
back to our old Star Citizen stealth mode.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing though, right? So I'm balancing several different things on the submarine, even that I would still do on a ship. Okay, what's my engine output in terms of heat? What's my EM output? Are my shields up? Because if I take my shields down, EM output goes down dramatically.
Way down.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Is my quantum drive still spooled up? I need to take that down because that's also putting out a ton of EM. What can I turn my weapons off? They put off EM. So it's a matter of, okay, if I'm legitimately trying to hide, the idea would be I need to minimize EM, IR, and cross section. So you can do that environmentally. The other thing would be, right, and pilots do this, if you want to limit or confuse your IR signature, put yourself in the sun. It's a big ball of heat. You put yourself in front of it, nobody's going to distinguish your IR signature from the sun. That's how pilots in real life spoof IR missiles sometimes. They'll come from the sun. Those are all the things that you have to track. And the other obvious things would be, I don't want to be full burn. I don't want to be throwing on the afterburner. If I'm trying to minimize my heat detection, I want to minimize my maneuvering thrusters, and the use of those. So still is better. Hell, if I can turn the engines off and put myself behind an asteroid and just hope that I don't get counter detected. Those are the three ways in which you would be doing it. And it works very similar in the submarine environment. I'm just doing different mediums. You know what I mean?
It
I think
also
this
works
all really
in
highlights
aircraft.
the value
Yeah.
of having a scout.
Yes. All right.
Yeah,
So we were. I was going to
absolutely.
lead into that. By the way, the ultimate win, right, is you position yourself in such a fashion so that you are not detectable, and maybe you're the prime target, but then you have somebody. I don't want to say sacrificial, but maybe they're in a better stealth ship. So maybe you're the Carrick, and maybe you've got an Eclipse buddy, right? The Eclipse can afford to get closer. The Eclipse can sacrifice some of the advantages potentially provided by cross. Maybe they're not as worried about cross section. So it's just a matter of, I just need to get my EM and my IR low enough to detect from a distance. And I just can feed the other guy, the Polaris that I have hiding behind the asteroid, accurate bearing, range, target information until they're absolutely ready to strike, or the target is in a compromised position. And
Yeah,
now,
Or
absolutely.
you're
and
or
then
you're
it's
just lying in wait, and once you get some sort of return on somebody, and you've narrowed it down enough to say, okay, this is a target, and it is a worthwhile or feasible target based off of this much energy being put off. Then your comm burst or whatever back to whoever who's way outside of range, but they're sitting ready. They've got your position put in, or some sort of prepositioning set up, so that way
Yep.
they can quickly jump in, whether it's behind or something. It's almost like setting up your, for a tier and I, setting up your fields of fire for an ambush, or
Yep.
I forget the verbiage is, but like if you were to place mortars or artillery beforehand, and you are gauging, okay, how far out your shots are, going to be landing, getting it all zeroed in beforehand, you could do that with your,
It's called
your
ranging,
almost
isn't it?
forward observer type.
No, there's a specific artillery term for
Triangulating.
it. Pre-position target, I believe,
Yeah,
Oh,
is.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
brain farting
yeah.
about it. I learned about it when I was on a
But I
FSC.
think there's
I don't
other
want to say
there's
fist,
a
but
better term for it.
yeah.
I
But
got you.
Well, the fister is the guy who's calling it in. He's attached to like a
Yeah.
company or a battalion
Well,
and is responsible for all
yeah,
fires at that level. But yeah,
I used to do that. I used to do the math for the fister.
You used to
When I
be a
was,
fister? What?
I used to be a fister. I'm a reformed fister now. I just do
you
medicine.
got all kinds of spice today. You want people to lick you? You're a fist man. Woo.
He's a fister, guys.
I
I've been
know,
away
and
from
he
my
likes
wife
to
for
be
2
licked.
weeks.
Tree. Look, I'm
Yeah.
not king shaming. I'm be clear.
No, live your best life.
Yeah. You do you.
You know what I
No
think
judgment, man.
when you think about it, for if you're a pirate, or and this could be if for anybody who's trying to lay an ambush or catch somebody or something, I think for a long time, a lot of players have been very concerned with firepower and maneuverability, and not so much concerned with detection and positioning, in terms of being able to detect someone before they detect you, and then whistle for your friends, and here they come, and you've got them outmaneuvered, without even firing a shot, and that's how you could get someone to oh well, see the hopelessness of the situation, and surrender the goods without firing a shot. The ultimate piracy behavior is 100% profit,
Yep.
just via planning.
Yep.
So let's be clear though. Anything that we're talking about here for a pirate can be used for a privateer.
Yeah, it
Or
goes.
or
It totally
or
goes
a
both ways.
or a military or mercenary outfit who is hunting pirates. And this
Yep.
is one of the
Yeah.
gameplay loops I think CIG is missing out on, and maybe we're not ready for it yet, and that's perfectly fine. But they need to allow civilized systems, right? You wouldn't expect to see this in Nyx or Pyro, but like in Stanton, for instance, those corporations are absolutely going. I mean, it's not bounty hunting; they're hiring you to go enforce the law, or win a prize, or do something, right? They're hiring you to go fight the enemy, and you get the spoils from that.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
mercenary work. It isn't bounty
That's
hunting.
privateering. Yeah, but in nautical terms, that's a privateer.
Yeah.
Truth.
And we deal with, right? And actually, Congress, and I've talked about this in my privateering video. Go watch that. All you people watching. We actually still have the in law. We can issue writs to civilians to go be privateers, but they haven't done it in like 200 years.
I think that's a great idea for a business venture. Night Cobb, I think when you get out of the Navy,
advocate.
we need to get our rich officer friend to fund a new
buy
venture.
A small dinghy. Mount a big gun on a small boat.
Down.
I have a EW friend in the Navy who's now the Space Force, who's perfectly willing to come on this adventure with us.
Sounds like so much fun. My wife would kill me.
Do you know how often I have to defend the Space Force? It's ridiculous.
But with that comes everything that you take should be yours as a privateer, more or less, and the government that hires you gets to skim off the top, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's definitely a gameplay loop, but it's like an official government-sponsored military operation to go take out a PvP or a PvE target.
Yeah.
And it might be one of the few times you get to keep the ship.
Honestly, in my opinion, that is what the current state of bounty hunting, if they transitioned the idea of that and fleshed it out a little more, that's really what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, it's not real bounty hunting. Bounty hunting targets are supposed to be brought in alive 80% of the time. Whereas, like, you tell me I have a group of targets, especially like the group targets. It's like, yeah, all right, this is pretty much privateering. I am being sent out to kill these guys, and no questions asked. And then now I can salvage their ships. And in 319, it'll get even better because I'll be able to salvage size 2 components and below, and reap the spoils. And the only difference is I'm not paying a cut, of the spoils. Yeah. I'm just getting a straight up contract.
Real quick, chat, did the sound alert play for you guys? I heard it in my headphones. Did you guys hear it? McBadgers, thank you so much for the follow. Really appreciate it. Okay, sweet. Because I saw the little GIF thing. I had to add it like 3 different times while I was getting everything set up, and I don't really have a way to test it, so I just have to hope this works. Before we continue, I just wanted to check on that, but also towards the beginning of this stream, we got a $50 donation to stackup.org. I got an email for it. Somebody used the link, I think, on the thing on Twitch. I forget what it is. Not the Twitch charity. So I'm not sure who did it. It just came through as anonymous, but I refreshed the goal. So we got a $50 donation to stackup.org. So whoever made that donation, don't know if you're still watching right now. Thank you so much for that very generous donation. Really appreciate it. That's super awesome. Like the little gift says, veterans are our mission, gaming is our passion, and we reflect that here. So thank you for that. McBadger says, you're welcome, Tree. It's Badgers from Inforunners in disguise. Oh, Badgers.
Hey, Badgers.
Hey. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you. I keep track of your stuff. I follow you on the YouTubes. But, would Night Cobb, what would be like is there like a Navy thing for, coming across a fellow sailor? Is there like a tradition you guys do? Because Badgers is a...
Hail and farewell.
Hail and farewell, yeah.
I mean, like, don't be wrong. We don't have like a traditional greeting, but I mean, that's what we call it when we...
Hail, sailor. How are you?
No, but I mean, like, our traditional, like, if you want to get formal and like how you say goodbye to like a fellow sailor is like, fair winds and following seas. But, I don't really have a good,
ahoy, Badgers. Yeah. Formerly the Brit Navy.
Don't do that again.
No, but
don't ever do that.
Badgers has always talked a lot about his experience.
I'm serious.
And he's I forget what you do exactly. I know you're sort of in the SAR industry now that you've gotten out of the Navy. But thank you for your service. And Badgers, if you're ever interested on coming in the podcast, we could have 2 sailors on here. Atira and I would be. I think we could handle it for at least 1 episode.
They won't know what to do with themselves. It'll be awful for them,
especially if Badgers is using
swabby talk.
Brit jargon. What what did he just call me? I have no idea what that means. You guys know what that means?
He used the traditional term, right? Because they set all the standards for nautical terms, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Badgers is your I don't remember what your MOS was, but I'm pretty sure you were surface Navy. You weren't a submariner, so
I won't
like
judge
me.
him too harshly for that.
Wait, isn't shipmate a derogatory term?
It is only if you let it be. And it depends on the tone, right, that you say it, right? If you say, "Hey, shipmate, how's it going, man?" Like that's a big difference from shipmate. Yeah, exactly. But
warfare
so
officer,
it's all about the
navigator.
tone. It's all about the tone.
We do the same thing with Devil Dog.
Awesome.
You can call that.
You just got raided.
Just got raided by.
The crew.
Hey!
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, everybody.
Part of the crew.
Right.
We're gonna let the sound alerts go flipping nuts. You were right, Night Cobb. We did it right. Paul, thank you so much for the raid. Oh jeez.
Hey, Paul. I wasn't drunk.
Part of the crew. Party man. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Just
Paul, he
tired.
was drunk.
No, I was tired. Leave me alone.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we got a follow command.
Part of the crew. Party man. Part of the crew.
I might have to disconnect the sound alerts for a few minutes because otherwise it's just going to go nuts. Thank you so much for the raid, Paul. Really appreciate it. I'm talking over the.
Party man. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
I didn't plan for this.
Noise.
You're gonna have to silence that somehow.
I don't know how to do it.
Part of the crew.
I appreciate all the follows, guys. Really do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This all goes to charity. Thank you so much, guys. Mental health is such a thing in the military these days, and honestly, this really means a lot. It's a real big problem in the Navy and honestly, specifically the submarine force. Yeah. So all this support is just huge. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, all of our hearts.
I don't know how to. I don't know how to mute it.
We should just press forward.
I didn't.
Well, they can't hear us pretty well over the.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
The alerts. That's the problem.
Let's see.
Oh, here, I'm going to turn on the volume so I can hear the chaos.
Part of the crew. Party man. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Keep the follows coming. I really appreciate it, but I am going to turn off the sound alert thing.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Once he figures out how.
Party man. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Oh, you have a really long one too. Yeah, I've
He
never
does.
listened to it before.
I like it.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
I've never listened to it because I'm always talking.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Got so many follows now. There you go, Tree.
Part of the crew.
No, absolutely.
I don't know.
Paul
What
just
do I
blew
do?
you up, man.
Part of the crew. Party man. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Paul, the bottle of bourbon is in the mail.
Part of the ship.
All right. So we really appreciate you. Yeah.
Part of the crew.
Unlike Tree's bottle of bourbon, which he still owes me. But that's okay. That's
I
okay.
almost called you out. So, God, what we've been talking about, if you can hear us at all, is
Part of the crew. Party man.
how we should be able to hide in Star Citizen to affect either piracy or bounty hunting, privateering type operations. We've been talking about radar sensors and how that translates to like what Night Cobb does in the Submariners.
Thank you for the sub, Badgers. Really appreciate you. I think that's the last of them for now. I think that's it. Okay, so mental note: have to figure out how to turn those off in a pinch.
In a pinch?
That was nuts.
No, it's good.
Yeah, because I still don't know how to do that. So yeah, for those of you who are just now joining us, Night Cobb and Atira and I, we have been talking. It's a 2-part episode. We always do generally 2-part episodes, and we're the first part, and we're nearing finishing the first part. We're talking about how predominantly piracy, but really it applies to anyone who is hunting for a target or targets, is how you can navigate space, with what is being developed for gameplay elements in Star Citizen, what they've talked about as well as locations, Pyro and Nyx, how you can navigate space and detect the prey, who you're looking for, whether it's a bounty, whether it's traders or something like that, and then detect them, lie in wait for them without them detecting you. Whether you are using space terrain, like gas clouds, nebula, asteroid fields, whether you're flying off the ecliptic, how you're managing your signals on your ship, your electromagnetic and IR signals, in order to not give away your position, how you're scanning for those targets without using passives versus actives in order to detect them without giving away your position, without scaring away the prey. Oh, here we go. There's another one.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
And I do think it should be hard. It shouldn't be easy.
Oh, yeah.
You should have to practice managing your systems. I would really like to see them kind of push hard to get us radar components and upgrades, things that
Part of the crew, part of the ship.
excel
Part of the
at
crew,
one
part of the
thing
ship.
or a
Part
couple
of
of
the crew,
things
part of
and
the ship. Part of the
suffer
crew,
in
part of
other
the
areas.
ship.
I think that would be good. I think that would benefit.
Yeah. And to be clear, because I know a lot of people worry about it with Star Citizen, I am not advocating getting as in-depth to the sim environment that DCS does this, right? Like if I'm in an F-18 in DCS, it's not even, I have to constantly change the position of my radar, decide what mode it's in, various other things. And it's actually so much of a chore that it takes pretty much 100. I have to put the plane most of the time on autopilot in order to lock up a target sometimes that's moving fast, or it's in an area of, low terrain, possible counter detectability. And I'm not saying it needs to get quite to that level, but I would love the idea that, on the more passive approach of, hey, I can have a better radar, or I have a better chance of finding targets by just upgrading or changing out the radar, or being selective about what I use for a given scenario, and then just being aware of its capabilities and stuff like that. I would like to see a little bit more in terms of and I think this is honestly planned, just the idea of what you're doing, where you are, and how your position should just have a greater impact on all the various detectabilities, cross-section, EM, IR. And right now we're seeing very, very much the very beginnings, the tier 0 of that implementation. And I'm just, they need to dial up certain things, maybe take a few things into account in terms of ranges of detectability based on ship's action. There should be a compromise in all ways, right? If I'm in a dogfight and I'm constantly changing position, I really don't think I should have sensor detectability past 5 kilometers. At least not good. You know what I mean? If I'm on the outskirts of a fight and I'm doing like an OODA loop, and I'm not burning hard, and changing my orientation perpetually, then I should have better sensor detectability. And, maybe that can go out to 10 or 12 kilometers, and then obviously there's the variability of, well, what kind of signature is that other ship potentially putting out? So the idea being is, I guess my end goal would be, if I'm in an Eclipse, a Talon, a Ghost, your ideal scenario is not sneaking up on a lone target, just hanging out in space, cruising along, because you should know that when it's not doing anything else like that, it's got decent sensor detectability regardless of whatever I do with cross-section, IR, positioning, EM. But if that lone ship, if that Carrack is involved in a dogfight and is burning, changing its orientation, but I'm 10 kilometers out, I should rest assured that I can close to a relatively short distance and deliver payload before it ever detects me. Or at the very least, its potential of detecting me is significantly lower. Right now, I don't believe we do that.
So
right
we
now,
did
it's just
talk, Zephyr, about low, high, passive versus active. We did talk about that earlier. And there's some of that, yeah.
And if you guys just came in, this will be up on my YouTube. Just youtube.com/ at tree0311 within the next week. So it's you'll be able to catch up on the conversation of what we've talked about and everything. And appreciate you guys coming and hanging out, because I think we've talked a lot about maneuvering and doing those things and using the sensors appropriately, using your ship appropriately to not give away your position. We talked about using terrain, space terrain for what it's worth, in order to both get to a position that's advantageous for you, but also to hide yourself. But I think, I think we're probably at a point where we can transition into the second half of the episode, because we've been talking a lot about sensors, and sensors, they work both ways, they're a form of intelligence. But I wanted to, I also want to pick the brain of Atira, our intel officer, because in order to, if you remember from, and we talked about this at the beginning, if you remember from the May 2021 quantum presentation, where you had the pirate, Tony Z was demonstrating, the pirate going around and doing behaviors, and the bounty hunter trying to track them down, and the pirate leaving a breadcrumb trail, as far as, how you would go about, tracking down this pirate and finding where they are in order to bring them in. And it's bounty hunting, privateering, mercenary work, whatever you want to call it, all three at once. But there's going to be systems that generate intelligence that you're going to need to use, to pick up the breadcrumbs, pick up the clues, to find out where the pirates are operating in order to narrow down your search and try and find them. Especially if you're wanting to get into an area where you could respond to an alert, in a timely manner. You're trying to get to that point. And so I wanted to ask, Atira, about, what are the types of intelligence that you think the developers at Star Citizen are working on incorporating and/or could work on incorporating, into the NPC behaviors and what we can interact with, to help you, to make that bounty hunting gameplay feel, obviously take it to the next level from where we are right now, where, okay, here's the bounty, this is where you need to go. There's a giant red flag on them.
Okay. Well, first I'll say, for everybody who just joined us, so I run a series called A Soldier's Opinion, that my very first video was on reconnaissance. So I would encourage you all, when you have time, because they are long form videos, go check those out. I talk about a variety of topics. The first one is reconnaissance, because I would argue that all operations begin with some level of reconnaissance. If you're going in blind, that's got to be something of an emergency, right? Yep. 9 times out of 10, you're trying to avoid that, right? You want to get as much information about an enemy position as possible before engaging it. So to that end, I'll just say, like, there's at its core. Oh goodness, you're throwing an acronym at me.
No, it's one of the ones that I remember from being an infantry marine. BAMSIS, as far as getting ready to make an op order. It's begin the planning, arrange for reconnaissance, make the reconnaissance, complete the plan, initiate the plan, and supervise. And if you are planning,
so that's a Marine Corps acronym.
Yeah, but like you said,
no, that's good. That's good. Use it.
Yeah, it wasn't dirty enough to be a Marine Corps acronym. I'm sorry.
No, that was clean. That was good.
We could find a way to dirty it down.
That's good.
So, like you said, if you're trying to make, if you're planning on taking down a bounty or taking down a pirate group, you got to start. If you want to figure it out, if you want to do it, you have to plan on how to do it, and then okay, in order to start planning, you need reconnaissance, and there you go. You need to start working on that.
There you go. So there's and the guy had to help me with this, because I had a total freaking brain fart when we were working on our notes for this. So great intel officer, but 5 core types of intel gathering that we have right now, more or less, and you could potentially add a 6th in cyber. But so you have SIGINT, right, which is the receipt of an EM emission, right? And you can tell a lot about what the item is or what the thing is broadcasting based on that EM signature. You have MASINT, which is kind of a hybrid intel. We call that, so signals intelligence, right, is the first. MASINT is measures and signals intelligence, which is this is stuff where, like, I want to look at a North Korean missile, and I want to find out what part of the missile failed based on the readings that we picked up. And it's kind of like it's actually a lot like what we have in Star Citizen, right? Where you see multiple components of a system presented to you in one picture. That's kind of MASINT.
Couldn't have said country X. You went with North Korea.
Go with what I know. Anyway, you got.
I'm gonna go get a drink.
Look, it could be any. It could be any country, but the only one actively rattling sabers for missiles and things are them. Then you got IMINT, which is imagery intelligence, which is often kind of mashed together with something called geospatial intelligence, which is a little bit more focused on things like terrain. And we might push that into something like space imagery intelligence, which I think is something that value add in the game if they could adapt render ranges. Then you have human intelligence or human and open source intelligence, which we call OSINT, which is the newest form of intelligence. And OSINT often comes in the form of like online activities or scanning media or whatever. And so those 5, and then you could add a 6 with just cyber, although I don't know how they would do that necessarily in Star Citizen because interacting across a Star Citizen wide web where you could go in and screw with somebody. And I don't think they're going to let you hack somebody's Spectrum account to figure out where they are in verse or anything like that. So
okay, but that brings up
that one. I think
we
might leave off, but yeah.
I wonder, because Spectrum is meant to be an in-game thing. Like it's in-game, it's in lore.
It is.
You will be interacting. And it's not just the internet, but it has like news, and there's like forums and stuff. I wonder if there will be maybe not randomized, but event-driven in the term. So say this pirate group in Pyro, and it's an NPC pirate group.
Sure.
Conducts an attack, and they conduct an attack, and they destroy a number of ships or something like that. I wonder if they might brag about it on Spectrum, on some of like the almost pirate radio type channels, where you could be like, oh, okay,
I would love to see the AI associated with posting shit talking on the Spectrum forum. That'd be hysterical.
Yeah.
So that could work. I also think there's also an avenue for them for OSINT where like Hurston News Today or ArcCorp News Today or whoever picks up a distress call and then puts out like a hot take, right? Like, we've got another pirate attack in, Stanton today, and according to the SOS, it was between Hurston and ArcCorp, right? And so from that open source intelligence, that media report, you get an idea that somebody, either an NPC or players, are operating on that trade route at that time. And
I can totally see OSINT being NPC, almost one of the big primary ones.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Once they get news in game.
And then if it happens over and over again, right, it starts to generate missions. Right.
Yeah, that was a big part of Freelancer and a number of other space sims, is having the little news reports of reports of attacks in this system, and you would go there in order to find more pirates or find bounties. And I think that's definitely something that we would see in Star Citizen. That's a really good point.
Unfortunately, we think about it, a system is entirely too large for us to go, then the pirate attack in Stanton. Okay.
Yeah.
5 days later after searching in vain.
They, like in the Freelancer, it was, you go to this system or you go to this planet in this system. So however they want to break it down, like they wouldn't give you like a grid, a grid coordinate or anything, but you would know an area, and that might be one of the first steps that you take to, okay, I'm going to start my search here, in this general
So what
area.
I would like to see, because I think the Quanta are going to give us this, and I hope we start to see this, is the establishment of the most efficient trade routes as defined by what the Quanta are doing. So you would have a Stanton to ArcCorp trade route. You would have a Jump Point X to Microtech trade route. And you would simply say somewhere along this trade route, and in Stanton's case, it could be outside the asteroid belt or inside the asteroid belt. Right, you can have a defining characteristic there. There is pirate activity, and that would be your OSINT report, and that would be, or if you come across an NPC on the ground somewhere, that could be something like a human intelligence report, a human report, where you get that person tells you there's been a lot of activity, or he has heard that certain unreputable people are going to be targeting that soon, right? And that tells you as a privateer or a military security person that this is where you're going to want to hang your hat for a while and see if you catch them in the act. The problem is going to be then zeroing in on that, and we've talked about this a lot, and it goes right in line with kind of our earlier discussion with how you kind of neck down where that person is, and that's where you kind of get into SIGINT. And we were talking about from a submarine perspective today in that three-dimensional space of the ocean, right? Which Night Cobb was talking about. It's all sound-based, right? And you're listening to sound. Well, in Star Citizen, that's more or less EM. Over range.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to have to but one axis of EM emission is not going to tell you where they are necessarily. So we were talking about earlier, or actually just a few minutes ago, about reconnaissance and the value of reconnaissance and how that is important. And that gets back to bisecting and then triangulating where a pirate fleet is or where an organization is. And this kind of gets more, I think, into PvP versus PvE mission giving, because I don't think Star Citizen is going to go so far as to say go out and fiddle around for an hour to find this one ship that's a problem, right? It's going to be a larger organization. It's going to be a larger, higher level, higher threat mission if they're going to ask you to do that. So you push out your trackers or your ghosts, depending on how stealthy you want to be, and you have to sit out there and listen. And you're going to need multiple ships at different azimuths to the proposed area of operation, all listening. And what Star Citizen really needs to give us to make that relevant is a way to tell bearing in three-dimensional space to narrow down where those things are. And I don't think every ship should be able to do this, but we're talking a couple 100 kilometers away, right? So your reconnaissance guys not in threat are getting a bearing based on signal. And it could be a mast signal, like you've got a fleet out there, like it could be a large group of pirates that are all talking back and forth, or all of their ships are emitting in one place and they can see that. They tell you now, because they're out there, right? 3 different grids, exactly where they are. Now they need to be able to map that somehow so that we, as the military force that's going to go interdict them, can then plot to it and jump to it.
Yep.
Right.
And not only that, but be aware of the complement and the loadout.
Well, there's only so much you're going to get from this, right? So for the Army,
yeah, but that would complete your intel picture.
It would. That's a different end, right? So if you've got trackers out there with their sophisticated suites or terrapins, there's somebody ghost in the chat, right? You got your terrapins out there. They got their SIGINT packages active. They're listening. You got 3 of them or 2 of them. They give you a bisection or triangulation, right? All that's saying is there's a huge clump of signals here. And based on, let's say, our OSINT that says somebody on this trade route is a bad guy and they're doing bad things, we think that that's them. But now you're right. Now I have to get in there with a different type of ship, and I have to confirm that's them, right? And so now,
that's what you're. I agree with you in what would probably be the future, but in the current state, right? That terrapin could also pull a scan. Depending on the range.
Depending on the range. And that's why I think Star Citizen, they've given us the biggest playing field ever, and it's only going to get bigger. That's why I think certain scanning ships need to have larger than 10-kilometer ranges. Right? Because it's all about the sensitivity of your antenna.
Yeah, and don't be wrong, like Terrapin should be like an AWACS in that regard.
Well, but what if you have a Carrack out there with system scanning capabilities, right?
Yeah.
So, it could be, it could be like an AWACS, but effectively what I'm saying is from 50, 60 kilometers out, right? He can see, he's outside probably the range of another ship to see him.
Yeah.
And then he can kind of dial you in. From that point then, right, as you build your intel picture, as you were saying, you got to send in something else. You got to verify something else. And I don't think you should be able to scan from somebody down from that far. So you got to pop in a stealth ship. So now you're talking about your Eclipse, your Ghost. It could even be, what is it? What's the Tavaran dropship that's a stealth? The
Prowler.
Prowler. Right, yeah. Something with stealth.
Right,
Doesn't matter what, just something with stealth capability. And he drops in within 10K. Terrapin is a stealth ship.
So here's what I would think, right? And to your
Terrapin
point,
has the ability to do stealth. I don't think it's Terrapin is stealth while on the move as much as Terrapin can sit because it's
turn
supposed to have
everything off.
Well, it has that ability
And look
to
like a rock?
sit and then close all the vents and hold in all the emissions for a period of time, while scanning passively and being
Right.
essentially blind on the radar. And so I wanted to hit on something because the way you laid out the different types of intel and in the way you talked about them and how they might relate to what sort of intelligence you might be gathering in Star Citizen, to start your hunt. It almost lays out like a sequence of events as far as like, you're starting here in order to, at the 30,000 foot view, in order to get you to where, this is going to get me a target within, say, a planetary system, within a star system. Like, you are in this star system and you get, whether it's open, the OSINT or, you get like the OSINT in order to tell you, okay, there are targets or there, are known targets operating within this area, and that'll get you to within, say, the Hurston planetary system or the Pyro 3 planetary system. And then from there, maybe you go and find some human intelligence at that location, in that area.
All
The various
of these things happen
zones.
simultaneously.
Yeah.
All of these things happen simultaneously.
Mhm.
Right. So, but
But
I was addressing
I mean
from
sequence
an
in terms
operational
of
perspective.
getting your it's an inverse triangle, to get
Sure.
you down to that narrowest point to where you're talking. You were just
But
talking about as far
a human person might be able to direct you right to where they are. Those are our
that's a good
most
thought.
sensitive. Those are our most sensitive human assets. Are those that are in a room or know the people. And this gets back
or
to PvP,
active
right?
crew on that ship that has infiltrated the pirate org,
Absolutely.
that is in their Discord and that is in their fleet comms and is actually coordinating like with them supposedly when actually they're feeding you intel.
And so if I were going to do that, I would have two computers. One computer would be wholly dedicated to just the Discord I was typing in. And the other computer would be what I'm playing Star Citizen in as a member of that crew. And so as I'm being an engineer or a gunner or whatever, and
people
I'm
are
in
already
their
picking on this.
Discord.
There's like so Eve.
Yeah, I'm chatting to my org, telling them where we are, what we're doing. That is human. And I think there are already organizations.
Human isn't just NPCs. It's going to be, contacts for,
absolutely
for
players.
Yeah.
I think most of it is going to be players. I think most
human's going to be mostly players.
Is mostly players. Is intelligent people. Yeah, haha. So Eve, absolutely. But why was it done in
guys,
Eve?
That's probably true.
It's because it's effective.
Well, and if you, I do think we're going to see a lot. I think you will have a greater volume of NPC human, but I think the level of detail from player-based human, higher quality versus quantity, like the quality of the information from a player human intelligence source would be better one for one than the quality of information from a NPC one. But you'll have more
100%.
opportunities for NPC, human, just because there's so many more of them. But like the NPC tracker service is on the progress tracker. It's a service that they're building into the quantum system in order to track NPCs, and that information will get relayed back to different services, including, the NPC behaviors, in order to give you human intelligence as part of like conversation lines or maybe something, whether you're going to bribe that bartender or you're going to beat him up. Yeah.
Yeah. If they could build that in, that would be fascinating. If you could walk around and as a bounty hunter or as a militiaman, military person, and ask NPCs and have them tell you where somebody is. But from a tactical perspective, out in space, I don't know that unless it's a player on as a part of their crew, I don't think you're going to get real time human.
Yeah, not
Right.
real time, but
So-
it helped
So
narrow
the
you down
NPC is going to
from.
know. The NPC is going to know the trade route they're on, and maybe they know on average about how long it takes once you start a jump to get intercepted of another NPC. But I don't think they're right because those are things that the server can track, and those are things that the server can prompt into an AI response.
Oh,
But
before
once
you
you
continue,
get into
sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
Dark Silver. Does that sound right? Dark Silver.
oh
Dark
yeah, holy
Silver
cow, 100
just donated
Woo!
$100 freaking dollars to StackUp.org.
big money.
07's in chat. 07's in chat. Everyone, 07 to Dark Silver. Are we saying it right? Holy crap, you mad lad, you freaking legend. So
Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
yeah, that is absolutely huge. You're I got to think of something to do to reward donors. I haven't thought.
Needs like a
I
special
think
badge.
Night Cobb
Yeah.
should have to sing them a impromptu song with their name in it.
Well, I want something that's permanent, like, whether they're watching Pathfinders or if I'm doing a gameplay stream, they're hanging out with Armchair Admirals and
Yeah, how about we just go with like a little extra badge on their chat icon?
Well,
We
you don't want to
what I
sing?
can
to punish everybody. Right?
it's
I want
hard
people to continue to donate to charity, not like
Yeah.
don't, for love of God, don't make him sing to us. Like,
Oh
that-
yeah, no, sing.
no.
Well, so before we go on, that just brought the total that you can see at the top of the chat at 525. That's since I started the charity drive in October. And what I forgot, what I didn't do is I didn't reset it at the end of the calendar year. But for this year, the thing that's above my head will be updated in the next several weeks to accurately reflect what is current for this year. And that the totals from the thing that you can see above chat, they get reported to Stack Up every quarter. So they will get some of that information. It just lags behind. But the reason the goal is $1,000 on both is because if we get to $1,000 as a community donated to StackUp.org, it means that we will have sponsored. I forget what term they use for it, but it's where they do a big old gift package for someone who's deployed or a veteran in need, struggling with PTSD,
package.
like a care
package.
Wow, deployed is
it's-
a care package. I don't know what they call it for you.
No, but StackUp uses a
What's your
specific
shade
term because they have two different.
Oh,
levels.
it's like a crate, something crate. I want to say.
Yeah, it's like a something crate or and the second one is like an air raid or whatever. But that's my goal is to get to the point where we as a community have sent a great big gamer care
crates
package.
and air assaults, right?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I want us
crates
as a
and air
community to send off a supply crate to some military members or veterans in need this year as my initial goal, and I think we're definitely going to get there because we're well over halfway, and we're only just barely into month 4. So I can't say how much I appreciate you guys, whether you're donating directly or just hanging out here and watching. Just by hanging out here and watching and dealing with
Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
the commercials.
Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship. Part of the crew. Part of the ship.
Another follow, yay! But so if you're watching the commercials, that money, if you subscribe, that money, anything that goes to me, I also donate. So like I get another payout here in like 2 weeks, so I'll have donated $300. It's about $100 of my own money and $200 worth of monetization from ads and subs, which is you guys to StackUp.org on top of the generous donations from the people who have donated directly. So I cannot say how much. When we hit that goal, I'm literally going to cry on stream. So just be there, be ready. We're going to clip it. It's going to be a thing. But sorry, Atira, I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's a really big deal.
That's
to me.
worthy. Worthy.
Yeah, it's worthy.
Big deal.
Worthy interruption.
Awesome. All
Where
right.
were we? Train
Let
of
me,
thought got totally
Cheers,
derailed.
I don't
Cheers.
know. Gone. So we talked about how we can use SIGINT to narrow stuff down. And the same could be said for Mazint, right? And Mazint is more the kind of thing that readings are going to tell you. Again, this is already kind of in the game. Components. It's going to help you. You can tell from the emissions of the ship what components they're running, what weapons they're running, that kind of stuff. So we've kind of already got that in the game, and I think that's fine for being up close. There might be specialized ships that let you see that stuff from a really long way away.
Oh,
I
totally
think
agree.
they haven't really expanded or thought about that, but like reconnaissance isn't something you get into someone's face over. And I don't think Star Citizen devs understand that, right? Like, be it in the Navy, be it in the Army, the Marines, the Air Force, right? The Air Force is like 30,000 feet for their reconnaissance. They're higher if they're in super sexy aircraft, right? They're a long way away from the enemy when they're doing reconnaissance, right? So then we get into, let's talk about imagery, GEOINT, right? I definitely think there's a way we need some of our ships to be able to take in-game images of targets, right?
Yeah.
So that we can then take that back and plan around it. I think this is going to be
Mhm.
especially effective at high level. Some of these new super sexy bunkers that might have all kinds of different defenses and stuff, right? So, and then player bases especially, right? Because player bases are going to be a nightmare. Because once
Well,
they
player
let us
bases,
start
but
dropping turrets on the ground, missile launchers, and what's up?
the other thing is, not just player bases, but I guess it would still fall under a player base, but they're, if players are storing or making using a temporary base out of a cave, or an abandoned facility,
Wow.
regardless of what it is, it might be something
So
where
that's going to get into drone
it's
work,
not
but
really, but not as obvious, and you're going to want that information so you can analyze it, so you can come up with a plan. It wouldn't be, oh, okay,
yeah.
well, it's all right out there in the open.
Well, right. So, I mean, the idea, like some of these caves that we go to now have like ash and trash on the outside of the cave.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that a certain there's a certain area, right, that there's a potential underground enemy base, right? It might help if they don't want to give you the direction or the location specifically, the devs, then they could make you search for it using Mark 1 eyeball. But you're not. But that's silly, right? Because you should have some type of optics that helps you scan that down or find that. So imagery capabilities, right, allow you to do
Not
that.
just print screen and
But,
zoom.
well, right, but not just
I
print,
mean,
scream, and zoom. I want
but-
something in the game that lets us
Yeah.
do it. So, like, if I'm flying
Yeah.
over a player base and I can see that this organization has 15 turrets, 6 of them are some type of energy-based weapon, right? Another 6 are, missile systems, and then, what is that, 10? So we got another 5 that's like ballistic systems or something like that. I now know like where I need to kind of sort my attention. So now I want to hunt around. Do I see a power plant that's gonna reduce their energy level so that they can't employ all of those freaking dumbass energy turrets, right? Is there a radar system that, and this goes back to, right, bases shouldn't just have every radar has its own, right, or every gun shouldn't have its own targeting system, right? You should have a centralized targeting system that you can target
or hack.
and destroy.
Yeah.
Or at least the turrets should be reduced, right? Or reduced
Yep.
capability. And if
Reduce
you,
their
if you have like,
effectiveness. Yep.
yeah, and if you have a large thing, it increases their effectiveness. So then, right, your reconnaissance says, okay, well, these a-holes have this dish system that makes them way more effective. That needs to be a primary target before I try to infiltrate. And maybe hot damn, you look at that base and you say, it's stupid to try and do a combat drop in this. I'm going to drop 5 kilometers out and I'm going to do a ground assault. Right? And that's just the best way to approach this particular player base. And that's because you've narrowed down it with their signals. Maybe based on signals intelligence, the type of radar system they've installed, and it's either a civilian grade or it's a military grade or it's a C grade military class, right? Whatever, how much money they've spent. And then you also know how many weapon systems they have, right? And you can make that determination. Then you photograph it, and then you can kind of see, what the layout is. You can find your best avenue of approach for your attack, right? You can make those plans based on the intel you have, right? And the same thing applies to space, right? You could send in an aircraft. You can take a space image, right? Either thermal or EO, it doesn't matter, right? Depending on the lighting and depending on, what's available of that fleet, right? You get within 10 kilometers, you zoom in, you take a picture of that freaking pirate fleet floating in the trade lane, and you say, well, hot damn, those dudes are running 2 Idrises and 32 fighters. F that, man. See you later.
Yep.
I'm not going. It's a death trap. Or I got my Javelin on standby, and I'm now going to paint that target, and he's going to launch size 10 torps from 100 kilometers out, and those things are going to just toast in, right? And then they'll start to target when they get within 10 kilometers. All right, they're just going to ride your beam in. Right, there's all kinds of things you could do with this to increase the tactical options available to our players. So either space-based or ground-based imagery. Right? And I think we've talked about all of them now. The last one we should talk about is a subset of SIGINT, which is comment. And this is one I think that Star Citizen is going to have a rough time employing outside of NPCs. So they had talked a few years ago about making, and you're right, Tree, you said Spectrum is going to be in the game, right? And Spectrum, in theory, should allow for organizational comms, right? That was like their dream. It doesn't do it now, but you would be able to have a full structured integrated comms for your organization through Spectrum. Great idea, especially when you tie it into the game, because it allows you to do comment. Comment is internals. So if SIGINT is externals, right? Frequency, waveform, amplitude, all that crap. Comment is the internals. It's what you're hearing now. It's the conversation, right? And so comment would allow you to not have a person on board their ship reporting back what they're doing, right? It removes the human component, right? So if you have a person on board telling you everything going on, you don't need comment, right? You're spy. But if you don't have that, you need, and you want to know what they're saying, then it's comment. And you need to be able to real time hack into their systems remotely, which would effectively be hacking into Spectrum comms and then listening to it and finding out what they're saying. And you'd have to be able to do this in a way, they'd have to build it in such a way that you are detectable, but not immediately.
You have to like defeat somehow the reliance on third-party applications like Discord.
And that's the problem. And that's why I think Star Citizen and CIG will have a hard time getting players to transition to a Spectrum chat. Now, Discord doesn't offer tiered comms, right? Which is a problem that Discord needs to solve, like stat, for any type of large organization, right? So by that I mean there's a platoon comms, there's internal vehicle comms, right? Then there's your platoon. Then there's your company, then there's your battalion, then there's your brigade, and then there's your division, and then corps, and then all on top of beside all of those is your O&I nets, ops and intel net, your logistics net, your comms net. Everybody has their own separate thing. For ships, it would be department,
essentially.
And for ships, it'd be department.
Comms, you'd have a weapons
that's even
comms,
worse, right? Because
comms.
inside your ship, it's ship comms, but then sub comms within departments, right? So the engineer guys are talking, but you can't. The bridge guys can't hear that.
And you wouldn't want them to.
And you wouldn't want them to. The only person that's talking on the command net is the chief engineer. Yeah. And everybody might be able to jump to that net if like the chief engineer bites it, right? Because he's standing next to our relay that explodes and kills him. But right, so then the next person jumps up to the command net. Yeah. That's right. Oh wow, yeah. Or the second in charge of engineering then jumps onto the command net, and now he's the chief engineer.
I was thinking the medic is, don't worry, buddy, I got
him back to sick bay. I got you, man. But all of that. So then that's all these layers of comms that you got to hack into to understand, right, what the enemy is doing, right? And you may hack into the wrong net. You might hack into the gunner's net. You might hack into the broom pusher, the swabby freaking net. You might hack into the command net. So you got to figure out what those are. And if Discord can't accomplish that, I think a lot of people move away from it eventually, right? But that's bare minimum what Spectrum needs to be able to do. And I think if Spectrum could do that, I think it would, before Discord, I think it'll push people onto Spectrum. Because
well, even if they could limit that in the VoIP. Right now you have ship channels, right? You have party channel, you have ship channel, all that jazz.
You have ship channel,
Yep.
party channel, and then local. So like
so proximity.
But that's not enough.
I agree. I
mean, the moment, and I know that they don't want to give us the Idris until Squadron 42 comes out, because the Idris is supposed to be quintessential to the game. And I get that, but they got to lay the foundations now, and the best way they can do that is to allow us to go ahead and build that into Spectrum at some point. Maybe not right now. Maybe it's not that important right now. Certainly, we don't have ships really complex enough to need that, but we can do ground operations that are complex enough to need that.
Yeah,
absolutely. With 100 people on a server,
so
I could create a company level operation of 60 guys. 50
I want to
guys,
bring that back.
Two groups of 50.
Because we're getting deep into comms and away from
Well,
intelligence.
all of these comms create signals.
They do create signals
that can be collected on, and those signals can then be hacked into for internals. And if you want to know what's going on in an enemy formation, all of this is present on the battlefield and overlapping.
Mm-hmm.
This is what an intel officer is thinking about, to be perfectly honest. Is an intel officer is thinking about every avenue of approach he can connect with the enemy and collect.
So I want to ask you, beyond ships,
okay,
what could, because we always bring things back to ships and vehicles, right?
We do, yeah.
And we're very well versed in what ships and vehicles have as far as components with and sensors and stuff on them right now, and some things that are planned going forward. But how else might you be able to what could CIG develop that could allow you to do some of these things without a ship? They've only barely talked. We've got some old information about drones, and Nazareth and I have gone off the deep end on drones, on Pathfinders, and they talked a while back about probes, as far as being able to dispatch a probe, in order to go out to an area and scan it, in terms of things that are, whether you deploy it from your ship or whether it's something that you take down to a planet's surface or carry with you, those sorts of things. Not a component on your ship, but something that is deployable either in space or on the ground or usable by your person.
Right.
What sort of things do you think that CIG could develop? Because in that regard, because if you think about
chat's got some great
salvage
ideas.
Yeah, that's
and I'll tell you, the backpack
SIGINT,
that's a thing. The backpack signals intelligence is a thing.
That's what I wanted to talk about, because we have that.
But it's absolutely a thing.
We have that for other gameplay. We have that for mining. We have it for salvage. We have it for tractor beams. Tools of varying sizes going all the way from personal to ship.
Right.
How would we?
So
how would CIG
fill in the gap?
And this is for both of you guys.
I don't know that there's a handheld SIGINT device. There's obviously a handheld imagery device. They could certainly give us a super sexy camera that we could use to take images, right? Reconnaissance images. And I've talked about this actually from an in-game perspective, either in a ship overhead or ground, a terminal in-game that allows you to upload an image, work on that image in game to do analysis, and then export that to your friends. Now, I saw somebody in the chat that said, very general for the casual player, very detailed for the, what did you say? I don't know, I'll just make it a detail-oriented character. And that's what I said. So for bombing, right, and this ties in, you take an overhead image, and I'm going to get to your question, Trey, I promise. Then you can take that back, the targets you want to hit, then you re-upload all of those specific points that you want to drop bombs back into your ship, and that allows you to drop precision munitions. A normal player doesn't have to do all that to drop bombs. He can just go drop bombs. right? But a detailed player could do that, right? And have and get satisfaction from that detailed planning. So, from a ground perspective, I would argue that there should be some type of backpack portable deployable, right? I don't know that it's necessary. We do have something in real life that is like it's got a big antenna on the back with this big crazy it's all these antennas, and the guy can carry it and wear it around, and it is a signals device that he can listen to the enemy, right? Or he could try, right? So that's one thing you can do. It gives bearing direction, right? And then you can try and zero on the enemy from there. It requires multiple individuals carrying that backpack, right, to triangulate if you want to call for fire. Now, that said, you can absolutely do that. And I think Star Citizen, just like a ship, should give us that ability to reconcile those ground-based tracks to a single point, right? That's definitely something we should be able to do. That's the essence of ground-based reconnaissance. You could do something. I mean, it is 900 years in the future. You could have like a ping system built into your helmet. You could have a more better ping system built into a handheld of some kind. But that, and then you would need some type of imagery device that allows you to take pictures and take those back, right, and share them with your friends.
I love because Star Citizen it's a multiplayer game, and there's endless opportunity for co-op. And if you've spent some time in my Discord, I love co-op games. And one of the things I enjoy about co-op games is making it so that multiple people can work on something to get it done faster and more effectively. And I really love, with co-op games with like deployables where, okay, we need, it'll take one person, 5-10 minutes to set this damn thing up. But if we, drop it out of the back of our, Valkyrie or Cutlass Black or something like that, in order to set up, some sort of, a thing like you were talking about for, collecting signals, and being able to relay that information, dropping in a team that will be able to get this done in half the time, a third of the time, to set up a deployable device that will do the job that you want. That's something that I think would make for great gameplay. Being able to
so we have satellite drop-offs now,
mm-hmm.
right? There's an NPC mission where you like deploy an environmental satellite. Now you just need to allow us to purchase that, shift it into an inventory, pull it out, and then drop it off the back of a ship. There's a couple things you could do that. You could do sensors. That is certainly one where you would need to put between 2 to 3 at a minimum to give you anything more than early warning. And those certainly would be exceptional, right? And of course, that goes all the way up to the big old mine dropping ship, right? I always forget the name of that
Nautilus.
ship. It looks really cool, but the Nautilus, right? Because you have big pseudo permanent mine / satellites you can do it with, or you've got handhelds, right, that you can throw out, and they might last a couple of hours. The other idea that I think would be super cool is for planets that are not really civilized. Would be you drop 5 or 6 of those out and you get a GPS signal. So the idea would be if you're going to attack a target and you know where that target is, you drop these handhelds over, and for the next 4 hours you have a grid reference system directly above in geosynchronous that's telling you, that allows you then to collect, disseminate, and target precise coordinates of your enemy.
That'd actually be pretty cool. And that's something that they could actually implement relatively easily in terms of persistence, now that they've got that.
Absolutely. And they may only last a few hours.
Well, what's his name? Benoit. Benoit talked about how he was like, we didn't even realize the capability that persistence offered us until we thought about things like putting a homing beacon or some kind of sensor in somebody's ship.
Absolutely.
just tossing it into their cargo bay before they took off. But I mean, that would apply to a ground area too, where it's like I could go to that derelict wreck and maybe I just leave a sensor right there. And then I know when a player comes by, does the looting and stuff like that, and I can literally stay off the back and be like, oh, as a pirate, now I've got a lone player off on this derelict, kill bounty or retrieve cargo area, and caught a fish. Here I go, cruising into the fray. I'm in my Eclipse. I torpedo his ship. He's stranded on the ground. Now I take him out. I take whatever was in his cargo bay. I take whatever he had on him, and that's mine now.
Or that guy's just a bait, and he's trying to draw you out. And now,
don't be wrong, yeah. And we talked about the honeypot
5
game.
Eclipses sitting back there waiting to freaking torpedo you.
And that would be the thing, right? Yeah, and that would be the routine. Where if I stuck to the same routine and I kept doing that at the same site, obviously I know I'm making myself susceptible to other forms of intelligence in the form of that player.
You're setting a pattern.
Spectrum. Right. Exactly. I'm setting a routine.
So that gets back to the next big thing for Intel guys, right? Is we always looking for patterns, right?
Yeah.
When I was so we look for patterns, we look for connections, right? So are you in a certain place routinely? I'm going to set up near that place and wait for you to show up, right? And I'm going to ambush you. That goes back as far as time began, right? You set a pattern, you're in trouble. You follow the common trade routes, you follow the common roads. I know where you're going to have to come through based on the size of your ship, right? And Star Citizen has done a little bit of that for us, right? We know that there are small, medium, and large jump points. Certain ships will only be able to go through certain jump points. We know that if a pirate organization is going to move from one system to another and they have 2 or 3 javelins, they're going to have to come through at a specific jump point.
Yep.
Right? And we know that we could then put 15 javelins on the other side of that jump point in a combined arms operation, and we could destroy them as soon as they come out because we know that's the choke point, and we're looking for the choke point to kill them. The other thing we look for is connections. And we talk about
knowing that about your enemy.
What
would that the makeup of their force, and that what limitations that puts on them? What kind of intel would that fall under?
Well, it depends, right? So
that'd be more like Mazint, or
it would. So you could use Mazint, right? Well, I mean, Star Citizen has made it pretty clear. Certain ships emanate certain levels of signature, right? So, but we also know that certain ships are going to be able to mask other ships within their signature, right? Which is a legitimate EW technique, right? Two fighter aircraft today can fly very close together. If you imagine something like the Blue Angels, right? They will appear on a radar as one plane, right? So we know that is going to eventually make it into Star Citizen. It's going to be a problem for us to determine. I think the easiest way for us to know what a composition of a fleet is going to be is either paying one of these organizations who loves to infiltrate pirate organizations and get the information directly, right? By flipping through their Discord, looking at their fleet chats, looking at what their current fleet org is. My org does it. Everybody's org does it. How many ships do they have? What do they have? Ooh, this is how cool we are. We have 15 Javelins and 52 Endeavors and or, right? If and every, I guarantee every fleet on Earth is like this. Every organization is like this. You have more ships than you have players to run. Man, Ammo has a damn Javelin. We can't field a Javelin. We got like 30 active members. Hey, we're trying to grow. Come check us out. But we can't field a Javelin. It's ridiculous. It's a huge ship. So what can they field? And that's really what becomes key. So you go and you that may only be, you could get that from their Discord, right? You go look at their active members. You monitor the Discord, how many people normally come to their operations. That's all human. That tells you what they can field, right? Or if you don't have that in and they're operating in an area, you're going to have to get a picture of the fleet they're operating with. And that comes back to imagery. That comes back to the ability, and that may be a thermal image, let's be real. That may very well be a thermal image from 20, 30 kilometers out. And you can tell by the bloom on that image, roughly, that they have an Idris, they have a couple of smaller fighters, maybe they have some mid-sized ships that look sort of like a Connie, and you can kind of make that assessment. And then if you have a good intel officer who's a nerd and studies ships, you might be able to tell what their EM spectrum is and then start to determine specifics. But honestly, I think right now, based on the level of detail I think CIG is looking at, you're going to need to get close enough to kind of take an image and see what they're operating with. And that may not even be their full org. If they go to war, it's a completely different problem because they're calling in every single person for a specific time and place event, maximum participation, and that may generate a completely different fleet profile.
Yep.
Right. So that comes back to trend analysis.
Come back to human. And come back to human.
Well, it comes back to human, and it also comes back to trend analysis. Like, how often do these cats have a full-on, right? Do they post YouTube videos for all of their events? And during that YouTube, right, we're talking about real, and I don't know when you collect on them. In that YouTube video, what are they fielding?
Yeah.
Right? How organized are they in comms? Right? And that's what it comes back to. So it's more than just what they have in game. It's what they're putting out there in real life as well. And then you collect all of that and determine a profile.
You got to think. And I was thinking about this when we were generating this topic. Mongrel Squad, I mentioned it earlier, right? Mongrel Squad, notorious pirate organization. In fact, right before 318 went live, they were so bold as to put out, basically a YouTube video saying, hey, we're raising the black and we're taking no prisoners. The days of, negotiation
piracy
and ransom are done. Yeah, they said it's done. We're just going to blow you up and take your cargo. We're going to soft death you or hard death you and take whatever we get. That's how this is going down. You're on notice. Like, that's how bold they were in their claims. And then literally like a week ago, I'm thinking to myself as they post a YouTube video, and I watched it because I was like, this is intel, believe it or not, that they gave away for free.
For free.
For free.
Absolutely.
On like how their comms work. And I'm paying attention to their strategies, and I'm listening to how their comms work, and I'm watching what ships they come with. I'm seeing that, and you pick up the little things too, where it's like, okay, some of them use alt accounts. One of them even specifically said out loud, he's like, my alt just died to NPCs, but I was using that alt to spy on the player while I got a Cuddy Blue ready or whatever he was doing. And, it's one of those things, like, he had basically disguised himself using one alternate account to gather intel, while his other account he used to spool up and get ready to intercept, but it's, they're giving away those tactics and strategies via YouTube, which I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure they vary their tactics and stuff like that. So they probably, if it were me, I would have edited it to keep anything, sensitive out of it while relaying the intent.
Well, they're playing smart, because they are banking on most players not playing smart and most players not playing as organized.
Oh, absolutely.
And all it's going to take is an organization that is just as smart, just as organized, to take advantage of what they're doing, and put them back in place.
Perfect example. Are you a cargo runner? Do you love running cargo?
Part of the crew.
Is there, as you spawn your ship and pull out, is there a random ship hanging around the space station you're at? Is he just chilling there, not doing anything?
Yep.
What's his task and purpose?
Yeah, and anywhere where you go to purchase cargo and there's just a ship hanging out there.
And here's the thing, Stanton, there's only a couple places you can go, right? So, like, what direction did you travel? All he has to do once you disappear is kind of look at the direction you headed before you jumped. And then look at that jump point, right? The time it takes you to get from point A to point B is several minutes. We know this. I mean, he's already on the comm telling his boys, right? And they've probably timed it out.
That's exactly what they've done.
They know exactly how long it takes to go from point A to point B on a Caterpillar or whatever.
Absolutely.
Right?
And
your average time
in the video.
And they're going to say, okay.
Says, hey, he was coming this way, and now, you know what? If he was going to the location that we had the snare set up for, we would have caught him by now. He's rocking this ship. Yeah, we already caught him by now. Let's move on to the next target. And they bailed and moved on. And it was one of those things like they're thinking about that stuff. So
Absolutely.
if you're a player
So you
and a
have to think
cargo
about
runner, yeah,
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
here's the thing. You might use that to your advantage,
yeah,
right? You might send out an empty ship that's just looking to make contact. All you're looking to do.
Well,
Right.
you could even do one better, right? You can just take pauses in your quantum jumps.
Oh,
where
sure.
it's like you start your jump and immedially kill your engines.
Well,
and
but
then
the
you hang
quantum
loose.
snare is like a permanent thing, right? They don't, right? Isn't it? Oh no, they have to pop it, don't they?
So
Yeah.
with
I can't
quantum,
remember. It's been forever since I've tried it. I had it like when it first came out. I had it on loan.
with quantum, that brings
the
me back
snare,
to a
do you have
question
to-
I meant to ask you guys, and I want to ask both. And Nightcob, I'll let you give your answer first. And this falls into signals because or intelligence because it's going to we're talking about leaving a trail, and if it's a common trope in sci-fi where you warp away and it leaves evidence behind, and you're able to detect that evidence for a certain period, like it has an expiration date. Do you think we should have that sort of mechanic, for quantum, and do you think we should have it for other things? Like, if if you are in an area and somebody recently warped quantumed out of there, should it leave a some sort of trail? That someone was here. Some level of definition that says, they were here and they quantumed away and they went in this general direction. And if you use a star map, you can be like, okay, I know they went to probably one of these 3 locations. Do you think that should be a thing in Star Citizen?
That's I struggle with that one a little bit with the medium of space and all that kind of stuff. Because right in the submarine community, I don't have anything like that. Like your noise is what gives you away. So, the only thing that should give me away is if I'm going fast, I'm making noise. Bottom line is I leave myself immediately open in terms of where I am in that moment. And if I go dead quiet, slow down, ultimately it's not like I leave a trail of noise for any significant period of time behind me.
Yeah.
But I get the Star Wars trope of based
Star
on their
Wars, Star Trek,
hyperspace.
like it's
That's a modern thing
yeah.
for Star Wars. That's a modern thing for Star Wars. It was always there for Star Trek, but until the sequel trilogy, it was not a thing for Star Wars.
Yeah. I think based on the things we've talked about, part of me actually really accepts the fact that there's actually a lot of intelligence, especially watching that video. I'll give credit to Mongrel Squad. I think it's eye-opening. There's so many ways actually to gather intelligence. I don't know that we need any more. In the current state of Stanton as it is, now don't be wrong, you start getting into systems like Pyro, much larger systems, much more wide open spaces. You might get to a point where that is something that they need to evaluate to give us a little bit of a hint. Like if we're just having too much trouble finding targets, tracking targets, because there's so much space, which is totally a possibility. Then maybe they need to throw us a bone in that regard. But right now as it stands, I don't think so. I think we've got more than enough avenues to pursue that I don't feel like we need to add one more system that they need to develop.
So I think it's dependent. I think there are certain environments where you should leave a trail, and I think there are certain environments where you should.
Oh,
that's a good point too.
That's a good idea.
So
if you have a medium for retaining that trail versus vast open space,
clear open space like most of Stanton, no.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are certain conditions where you leave a trail. It depends on the radiation levels in the system. It depends on, I don't know. They could make up whatever science fiction bullshit they want. Let's be clear. It's a fictional game that sort of, kind of, maybe, sort of, sometimes reflects reality. And our job, what we're trying to do is make them think about ways to take real things and make it kind of gameized into their game, right? And there's some, right? Like if an armor brigade is on the move, there's 9 times out of 10, there's some type of visual indication that 5,000 people are moving. Right? It's just the way it is, right? It may just be the ground rumbles. It may be, right? It may be
4,000 of them are all complaining about it at the same time.
Oh gosh, and you feel the psychic waves of negativity of why the hell am I here? Gosh, I hate the Army, right? It made me
the E4 Mafia.
We didn't even talk about psychic intel.
Yeah, there may be a dust cloud, right? You're in the desert.
That's classified, guys. We can't talk about the psychic intel. I'm sorry. I know. I didn't mean to confirm it exists.
That's right.
But
neither confirmed.
Damn it.
Yeah, sorry, I blew it up. Right.
I had a War Thunder moment. Well, really, Atira started it. Yeah, Cyan.
It's all my fault. Yeah, I'm about to be relieved. No. But
God
yeah,
damn it.
You're culpable. But there are some environments where you leave trace. There are some environments where you do not. So I think there's definitely an opportunity for Star Citizen to kind of, to vary that, right? So it could be if you have the right radar, you can see a trace. But maybe that's not the greatest radar for combat. Right? Maybe it's stupid sensitive for certain types of radiations left by quantum drives, but it's absolute shit for targeting. Right? And so now you have to think about, well, if you're a lone person, right? You can't run that cool guy radar. But maybe if you're like a group of 50 people, one person can run that radar, but they're absolutely useless in combat. Right?
Yeah, they're AWACS.
Well, maybe they're not even the damn AWACS. Maybe they're just the sensor, right? That's all they can be because that's all they've equipped their ship to be.
AWACS guys are cringing in chat.
Wow, I mean,
way to go, Night Cop.
But the AWACS guys are very broad, right? Huge radar sees half the system, right?
Yeah.
That's the AWACS, right? The AWACS sees hundreds of kilometers and can then direct aircraft to a specific point to achieve a specific effect. This guy is looking for one piece of information, and maybe there's a radar that just can help you do this, and one ship can do it, right? And this goes back to like drones, right? Maybe your drone is equipped to detect this, and you have to send your drone out. You have to fly it around in a circle, redock it, pull out the thing, stick it in your freaking computer, and then it tells you what that system is, and it takes time and energy, and there's a game loop associated with it, right? And it's not something that's immediate or easy or fast, but it gives you good information.
Yeah.
Right? And that's another use for a drone, right? And we've talked about Intel drones. They need to have backpack launched drones that allow me, the player, to send a drone down a cave and find bad guys. And they may shoot that drone out of the sky, but now I know they're there. I've confirmed there's enemy contact. I've confirmed maybe there's like, depending on how deep I get into the cave, how many of them there are. It allows me to then plan. Noisy drones, sure. Yeah, but on a low-grav planet, I see max... Oh, gosh, I can't read that. Flash art. Yeah, noisy drones. Yes, absolutely. So you talking about... I wonder what he's talking about. Are you talking about a drone that bangs out lots of EM interference?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned
drones. I want to see what he says here. So an warfare drone... Go ahead. Go ahead, Tree.
I want to bring that up because it brings it back to what CIG is already doing. You know, and I think that they're thinking more about how to incorporate drones, and that's why I asked earlier about, you know, whether it's drones and probes and deployables and stuff, because I don't know how I missed it, but one of the more recent Galactopedia updates had an article for research drones, and within the article for research drones is that you could you would be able to deploy this drone as a research drone onto a planet that is protected by the Fair Chance Act if you had enough reputation with the UEE to do it, in order to use the research drone to get samples and to monitor the developing species. And it made me think about that, in relation to this, what sort of opportunities you might have with different drones, different, maybe not different manufacturer, but different configurations to do different things, like having a sensor platform, because the research drones were taking pictures and monitoring fair chance protected species. But if whether it's imagery, whether it's your IR, EM signals and stuff, I think that's a really great way to gather information, because we talked about how you want to limit your own exposure. Well, a drone is going to be the size of a damn person, and if you can deliver that drone in a way that is stealthy, in order or deliver it ahead of time for when someone's not there, it can allow you to get a lot of that information without being exposed, in a way that is potentially a lot more efficient than getting your ship anywhere nearby.
Is that what we want, though?
I don't know.
I think it should be available.
It's an option.
I love the idea of it. I love the the idea of it being an option. So, okay, Max Flashheart.
How do you mitigate it, though?
He was taught you don't. You got to be
range.
Well, so what he's talking about. So I'm going to attack two different things here. So, old Max here in the chat, he's talking about something that basically is a drone that can blind sensors. So it basically goes in. It's like in my recent
e-warfare drone.
It's an e-warfare drone. It's like my last video. I talk about e-warfare. Go watch it. It's great. It's very technical. It's an hour and 45 minutes. I'm sorry. I know I am. It's great. That's what real alcohol does. Take note, Paul. When I'm actually drunk.
Dude, Paul already did a solid and plugged us.
He did. I know. Right. You go in.
Now you're yelling at him.
Yeah, dude. No, I'm not. I love Paul. He's great. An EW drone goes in. He bangs the gong. It basically blinds a certain spectrum, which prevents that. And this would be a fantastic example of a weapon system you might use against a PvP base, or even an NPC base if they have a specific radar system that allows their ground turrets to target you effectively. You send in this drone, it completely distorts the electromagnetic spectrum to the point where the turrets cannot see you or target you anymore. That allows you to conduct the Tree 0311 combat drop, right? In your Valkyrie, you get out, you go and you attack the target, right? Because Tree loves being a drop pilot. So that's a fantastic TTP for a drone. Now, but when you talk about collection, right, that radar on that base has to emit signal to detect, right? Now, we do have certain amounts of passive sensors, and we've talked about passive versus active in this video. But understanding the type of radar, what it's capable of doing, those are things you would detect with a reconnaissance drone and what we would call electronic support. So electronic support is the collection part of EW. Electronic attack is this what old Max there is talking about, where you go out and you blanket the EM spectrum so that nothing can communicate or see or any of that. That's electronic attack. And then of course, if you do the same thing in a defensive posture, that's electronic defense. So I definitely agree that is something you could do in that regard. Is you could send in a drone, you could either now what I was going to say was unmanned ground sensors. We call them UGS. So Tree, you were talking about how do you persistently observe somebody's base and see everything they're doing, and it's hard to counter and it's hard to detect, but it's also hard to emplace, right? And that's what an UGS is. So an UGS looks like a rock, and we make the UGS specifically look like a rock that is indigenous to the area.
Yeah,
right?
hard to in place, but also you have to be fairly
Hard to in
nearby because
place.
of limited transmission
Absolutely.
distance.
So
Yeah.
it has a certain lifespan based on the battery that's in it. And, in Star Citizen, we could probably figure out some type of micro solar panel that allows it to charge over time so it has intermittent coverage. We have magnetic UGs.
Yeah.
We have visual EO, IR UGs. We have all kinds of UGs. We have signals UGs that can allow us to detect signals. Right? You have to low crawl and you have to put this thing down in an area and then you leave it and then you go away. And then you can go back and you can collect that, or you can receive a digital directed transmission. And this comes back to something we were talking about a while ago, where we were talking about a terrapin doing reconnaissance and then relaying that information back to a fleet ship, a larger group, right? Directed comms, right? So not a general comms where it just goes out, right? Directional antennas that push a signal in a specific direction. If you're not in that direction, you cannot detect it, right?
Yep.
Very important concept and something that Star Citizen needs to embrace. This idea that a terrapin, right? You imagine your bubble, right? Your command bubble on your Javelin, right? It shows you everything that you can detect, right? And everything shows you the battle. But then over here on the side of your bubble is this little single ball that is your terrapin. And he's looking at the enemy. So inside this little ball that is the terrapin, that is outside of the larger ball that is your organic sensor range for the ship, right? Because he's extending your range and transmitting via directional antenna back to you what he's seeing. And that's what allows you to target ships at range, right? Because we're in space.
Yeah.
I could shoot a torpedo.
You're essentially talking about data link.
Absolutely. Data link. Link 16, baby. Right?
Yeah.
And it's directional. So as long as as long as we're connected and the two can detect each other and maintain that link, that's how I can attack at super long ranges by sneaking an infiltrator in, having him hide using stealth, and then target for me. And then I can engage that pirate fleet, or I can engage that good guy fleet, right? If I'm the pirates, at range without them realizing. The same thing applies to like an UGS system, right? A unmanned ground sensor. You could put that thing down overlooking, Mongrel Squad's base, right? And it's just sitting there watching. You get to see when they depart, right? You can see when they come home, right? You can see whatever they're doing. And as long as you're in, right, that antenna, you probably can't consistently maintain that. But like you point it a certain direction, you know where that signal is going. So you park your ship there, and every now and again you get a data dump of what those guys are doing, right? And then you know, right, what they're doing. So if they depart, that's a perfect time to attack their base because now none of them are present. All of their ships are gone. Now you can use that information to your advantage. You attack their base, you wipe their base. Mr. Badgers. Link 16 is a military tactical data link network used by NATO. Thank you, Mr. Badgers. You are absolutely correct. So we need like Link 32, 900 years in the future. And it's, same effect. But yeah, you can use that information to your advantage, right? You plant your listening device, you monitor the situation. And when the pirate organization departs their base to go pirate, that's when you go in. That's the tactical advantage you need to destroy all of their resources, right? Pillage what you can, or don't even care. Just destroy everything and make their lives harder and then depart. And that's a perfect example of like using tactical intel to your advantage. That's another tool that we should have at our disposal. So, and let's be sure, I'm not anti-pirate. I mean, I am, but I'm not, right? They should be able to do the same thing to a lawful organization that has been bothering them.
Yeah.
Right. So
this is PvP and PvE.
Well, yeah, it's going to be harder with PvE, but yeah, in theory, yeah, absolutely.
Well, NPCs are going to have routines and
If they're going to allow us to destroy their NPC bases, then yes.
Well, you might not be destroying it, but you could be raiding it.
You could be raiding it, and maybe that would have a long-term effect on their ability to operate, and that would be acceptable. But they're all inevitably going to recover so that other players have the opportunity to do the same thing.
If you think about it, you are, on a small scale with the new Korea, you are raiding Korea, and if NPCs are, if they have if there's an NPC base at a UGF or an outpost or something like that, and they have patterns of behavior, because it isn't going to be simplistic like, you are just waiting for this one NPC to finish walking his circle around and get out of view, and then you run in there. They're going to have more complex behavior patterns, and there are going to be NPCs coming and going on ships and such. And so you will, they may not empty out the base, but there may be an opportunity where we're like, okay, right now there's 30 NPCs running around this base and there's only 6 of us. Okay, so we want to wait but we've seen them, come and go on ships, at 5, 6, at a time or more. So we're going to wait for, 2 ships to come in there and, maybe take off with 10 pirates to, it better our odds, and at that point you could go about going in there and raid the base, and get what you need, because the way I tie this into gameplay is it isn't all just about destroying and taking everything. It's there could be specific objectives as part of these missions, and that's why I tie it back to not just bounty hunter but mercenary work. Like if you think about there are going to be rescue missions, and this is what I'm excited about because SAR rescue type stuff. If you remember the imagery they showed us in engine from the overlays that they're using to build the outlaw outposts, and they had like prison cells. Well, if you think about it, those prison cells are going to have, characters in them. Probably not players, for long periods of time, but there are going to be people in there where it's going to generate a mission or a sort of a reverse bounty where you can get a contract to rescue that person, rescue that character, and bring them back
Absolutely.
to,
and that may be a limited objective.
Yeah, it's a limited objective.
Yeah.
And I may, because, the org may only have 5 to 10 people online right now because that's all that we could muster, and
Absolutely.
but we don't want to take on this pirate base that has several dozen pirates walking around. We want to wait, and so you've been observing them to wait for an opportune time to do a limited objective raid, to run in there, kill some bad guys, get the person out, and make a quick evac before they come back, and that might be a really smart way to complete that limited objective. It might not be take all their stuff. It might be take one thing. It might be take one person,
And that brings up an interesting point. Not that I'm a huge lover of PvP because I usually get spanked, but look, they're going to bring hireable NPCs in. So a PvP base may be manned and guarded by NPCs because some of these smaller pirate orgs may be local, and they will have a sleep cycle based on reality, right? So they all may go to bed at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and that's when you're going to want to hit them because they're
always got to get them on the mid-watch, man. Always got to get them on the mid-watch.
I mean, that's when you attack on the ground too. You attack.
Yeah.
I used to conduct raids when I was a young man. We used to go in at 3 o'clock in the morning. Right? And
for everybody's reference, that was back in 1966.
Let's be clear, that was back in 1854. And okay, F you, man. Anyway, the point is, you choose an opportunity when your opponent is asleep on the job.
You fight when and where your enemy is weak.
That's absolutely correct. So you make sure that, and it may involve you staying up late, right? If your job is a law enforcement organization, or if you are a pirate that is really sick and tired of this one org pestering you, you monitor their cycle when they're active, and then when they're not, you go and you take as much of their property as possible, and you ruin their lives. Because we know this is going to be a thing. We're going to create bases. It's going to be a monetary in-game investment to get these things built up, and that's where we're going to be. And and you make that, you bring that pain. Now, is it permanent pain? No, they're going to recover eventually. A certain amount of grinding and hours left will bring it back. But for the moment, you just cost them money. You cost them time. You cost them effort. And that's going to be frustration and irritation. And you're going to be successful when you monitor their cycles of activity, and then you take advantage when they're not. Because an NPC, eventually, we talked about this in Tree, right? Right now, NPCs are like freaking snipers with a 9mm at 300 yards, which the bullet doesn't even travel that far. But look,
It's basically
eventually
me.
eventually that's going to dial in.
That's what I do all day, every day.
Yeah. That's what the Marine. Yeah, that's the Marine in him coming out right now. He's like, I can hit a gnat's ass at 300 miles with a freaking toothpick. But look, eventually they're going to dial that in, and NPCs won't be that great all the time. So you're going to have a mix of NPCs that you can afford, right? Some good, some medium, and some poor. But the time to attack will be when it's just NPCs, because they're always going to be less adaptive than a human.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And you wipe the floor, you blow up their base, you take whatever you want, and you leave. And now they wake up the next morning and they're screwed. But that's going to require a lot of what we've been talking about here, which is proper intel planning, understanding their patterns, understanding when they're active, when they're not, understanding what their threat levels are, what their defenses are, what they've laid, what they've put in place to keep you away. And then then you have to plan around. Right. And that's like one of the big things I love is this idea of artillery, right? They're going to put a bunch of guns in place. That's cool. I'll just call in artillery from the next ridge line over and just
pound. That brings us back around. That brings us back around full circle too, is because, this is it literally is a circle, of an operation where you are constantly, Jesus, I can't do anything with you. I don't know. No, but you're
what do you want from me?
But you're gathering intel to plan for an operation, in order to do something. But then at the same time, you also are doing what we were talking about earlier in the first part of the episode, where we've done our reconnaissance, we've made our plan, we've everything's ready to go, but we don't want to just go in guns blazing. We want to be tactful about how we approach the target, regardless of what it is, in order to not give ourselves and our plan away, and retain that advantage. And that's what we were talking about earlier, where we want to maneuver in a way that because that would be part of your plan. Is okay, based off the intelligence we've gathered, I'm going to use this strategy to maneuver my forces into place to give myself the greatest tactical and strategic advantage, over my target, and to best accomplish the mission. And it's, I really, it's a really good way of laying this all out, in a, it's a circular fashion, talking about both aspects, of coordinating your forces and coming up with a plan, and this is what, like Mongrel Squad, Nightcop, you brought it up multiple times. They play smart, but they play smart based off of what the game is right now.
Yeah.
The question is, how well will groups like Mongrel Squad, or lawful groups, the Yang to Mongrel Squad's Yang, how well will they adapt to CIG adding in more, elements to the game, more complex elements, to the game that allow for gameplay with the type of depth that they've been talking about for all these years. And that's what we've been talking about for the last 2 hours is, what aspects of depth are going to be available.
I'm not sure that right now lawful organizations are adapting as fast as pirate organizations.
No, I think you're entirely
and I don't
correct.
think and I think it's because, right, for pirates to have fun, their version of fun, right, they have to adapt rapidly. But there are systems in place for lawful players to have fun without having to adapt. And so it is something that CIG should, I don't know, maybe put some thought behind.
Well, you've got an ethical thing probably there too that you got to kind of like consider.
That's
I'll
true
tell you,
too.
I think a pirate, and this is going to sound really bad, but all things considered, I think a pirate organization is more comfortable with the idea of slipping, into, say, a cargo running outfit organization's Discord, getting chummy, eventually collecting a bunch of intel and stuff like that, and then abusing the shit out of it. Yeah. Whereas the waffle players, the guys that kind of stick to the idea of, I'm going to hunt pirates, I won't be a pirate. Those are not the kind of people that are ethically going to feel comfortable, at least in most circumstances.
So I'm totally ethically comfortable with infiltration, but I'll tell you, don't have the time to do it. There are organizations though that do. So if you spend the time, if you're watching this and you're like, oh man, I'd be curious about this information. There are organizations that do this. There are, and that's their whole shtick, and they're doing it now. So you can go out and find people that will feed you that information. Now, I don't know what their price is, but there are organizations that will do it.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So I will say from the operational perspective, right, it's plan, prepare, execute. That's what the Army calls it. I looked it up in the new FM 3-0 doctrine. Plan, prepare, execute, right? And the intel cycle, for those of you who care, which is, of course, all of these
Why
are...
are you yelling at us?
Circles. I can't. Where's my camera? There it is. Circles.
It's a circle.
It's a circle.
Planning and direction, collection, processing and exploitation, right? Analysis and production, and dissemination and integration. Right.
God,
so
he used like so many big words there. I had no idea. He's just rambling.
No, you know what? An Army private in the Intel Corps would know what that is. I know that you in the Navy have a problem with that as an E8.
What I'm going to do, Nightgob, is when I turn this into the video, when he says the words, I'm going to put them up on the screen, in big block.
I'll just remember it's a circle. You can find the graphic online. Look,
Tree are on point on the circle. We got that part of the game.
We got that down, right? So so you got to plan, you got to collect the information, right? You got to process it, which is what I think my little table is for in the game, right? So that comes back to imagery mainly. But you could also do this for EW, right? In the back of a Vanguard, they got that really badass, the Sentinel, that freaking panel, right? So you collect signals information, but now you got to like process it and make it make sense, right? So that you can determine something from it. They got to figure out how to gameize that, right? I don't want it to be real because that shit's boring and it takes years of study and to get good. I want it to be fun. Yeah. So you got to think about that, CIG, but like you got to process it so that it makes sense, right? Then you do the analysis on that information. You determine what it tells you, right? And then you got to disseminate that to all your freaking fighter pilots and your freaking capital ship captains and all that. And they go out and then you go into the operational plan. So they take all that information, they plan, they get all their resources together, they prepare, and then they go kill the bad guys. And that's how that works in real life. Now, that also happens full time, right? When we're not doing anything else. That happens very quickly. That happens within a few hours for a small operation, within 24 hours for a big operation. But, right, there's also thousands and thousands of people doing it. So it's got to be a game loop that lends itself to a play session at the simplest level, right? But then also for PvP, right? And we get back into the Eve, it could be several weeks of planning and preparing, right? Collecting, planning, right? And then an execution. So it just really depends. And they got to think about how they want us to collect information, how they want us to interact with that information and use it to then go after each other. And that's a PvP perspective. I think for PvE, I'm not sure they want to go quite that in depth. Maybe you could, but maybe it's not necessary.
I don't think it's necessary. I think what you're really talking about is going to be and this is where they're going to probably try and draw the line between Eve and this game. Although, like, I know a lot of people mentioned it when we started talking about this whole idea of like sneaking at other people's Discords and their orgs and then kind of destroying or manipulating from within and all that kind of stuff. You know, the advantage to preventing that right now is the lack of technology in the game. Like 100 player servers are essentially what is probably the prime culprit of limiting that, right? Like it might be one thing to have a guy on the inside and be like, yeah, I'm in this server and stuff like that. You know, but if there's a limitation on jumping into that player's server, like if the server's full, you know, even if you do know about it, like you can't join on them.
Absolutely.
And it would look suspicious if all of a sudden you were in their party. So it's kind of one of those like, you know, that's ultimately what's holding back that next level that Eve kind of already has. But that technology will eventually come, and people are planning for it. And
yeah, I think pirates are planning more than legal players.
I agree with you. There. I'm hoping though that, you know, Mongrel Squad, and part of me almost wants to know if like their intent, and other pirate organizations are like, their intent is like, the more we show this off, maybe the more we'll actually get resistance, and then it'll really get interesting.
Yeah,
you know,
they're
I think
trying
they would
to make
love
it more
that.
fun and challenging for them, because
at their core, they're PvPers.
Yeah, well, and
they want the challenge.
They don't have enough peers. You know, it's kind of like the player to NPC population, where, you know, out of, you know, for every, you know, one pirate organization like Mongrel Squad, there's, you know, 9 player, you know, lawful organizations, and only one of them, you know, is, you know, doing, you know, is on their level, or maybe it's an even lower ratio than that, you know. But in the grand scheme, you know, the odds of them running into their peers are very low, you know, and so they're trying to get more of that going. So I'm gonna bring it back.
Thing too. Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to bring it back.
I was
going to
say
just because
one of the impacts of signals, though. But go ahead.
Well, I'll let you have that point, but I wanted to bring it back because we are running kind of long, and I wanted to.
Oh yeah.
And I know we could go on forever, but I also try to keep the episodes.
Well, Tira can go on forever. That's for sure.
Identified that. I think
most of what I've talked about is completely unclassified. It's a 6-month course. Let's go.
But, you know, I do want it for the YouTube and everything. You know, keep it at a manageable level. You know, because I know we could talk about this stuff for a long time, but I also wanted to talk about what we're thinking about for our next episode as well. Before we sign off.
Well, let me say this one thing.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the ship.
The quantum snares, right? So one of the things they've talked about is those things are supposed to be highly illegal.
Part of the ship.
Those things are supposed to be highly detectable.
Part of the crew, part of the ship. Part of the crew, part of the
So the UEE is supposed to respond with significant force when a illegal quantum enforcement or snare has been activated, and it's something they don't do really in the game right now, and they probably wouldn't do in Stanton anyway, because Stanton isn't really, you know, I mean, it's a UEE system, but it's owned by the corporations.
But they have UE common law, and so the security services should respond to it. Yeah.
Assuming that the corporations are willing to absorb the cost of that fight. So when a mantis is out there executing quantum snares, and then the subsequent quantum enforcement, that should be, and this kind of goes back to what I was talking about for like writs, right? Writs of marque, which is what you would give a privateer to go out and privateer. You're basically saying this person using this ship under this username, under this specific frequency or whatever, is authorized to use a quantum snare, is authorized to use a quantum enforcement device. So from the UEE perspective, when you turn that on, the signal, right, that they are collecting with their vast intelligence network that is, you know, 900 years in the future, awesome, knows that you're authorized to do that. Flip side of that is they also probably know, depending on the system they're in, and this is what gets into high security, mid security, and low security systems, know that when a pirate organization turns on a quantum snare or pulses that quantum snare, because it's a pulse, right, and it grabs somebody right? As you know, based on timing of departure, right? And it grabs them. That pulse, right? We have multiple comms stations around the system that are immediately triangulating where that pulse is. And for the UEE and high sec system or even a mid security system would respond immediately with some level of NPC activity because they know that that's illegal activity and they know that it's probably associated with piracy and violation of the law. It's a good bet, right? So there's definitely some of that, but the player should also be able to detect that. How they want us to detect that, I don't know. But you should, as a player, sitting, waiting, monitoring in a Vanguard Sentinel or some other signals platform for EW, because let's be clear, electronic warfare is not data spike missiles. It's not hacking, right? That's cyber, right? Even though cyber and EW have a lot of overlap now, right? There's EW, right? Is the collection, right? Electronic support collection of signals.
When do we stop him from rambling?
It's
Do we
not.
just let him keep going?
Shut up. And then it's the attack. But you should be able to detect that and then
He's closing
plot
the
a
circle.
course to it. I am closing the circle. And that would
Yeah.
allow legal players to find pirates. Because when they
Yep.
pop that thing, if you're on the server and you can see it, you should
Or
be
you
able
should
to
light up
plot
like
a
a
course to
Christmas
that.
tree. Yeah.
And you should be able
Yeah.
to plot a course to it.
Yeah.
Right? So if
It-
you got a 30 people
Huge risk
sitting there
to
waiting.
using that if you're unlawful, for sure.
Absolutely. And it should
In a lawful
it should
system that is monitoring it, has their comm arrays up, stuff
even
like
in
that.
even in a low sec system, if there is a lawful org sitting there waiting for you in an asteroid field, in a nebula, whatever, just outside the nebula, and they see that spike go off over a trade lane, they should be able to see it because it's a massive signature. Or there should be all kinds of, if it's a medium security system, alerts that it occurred, right? Warning off civilian traffic, warning off people that are going through that area, and that allows you then the militia or the private security firm to then close in on that and get after the pirates. That would give the pirates the PvP gameplay that they want. And then if they win, right, it also puts pressure on them to get salvage or cargo off of those ships in a time frame, right?
Yep.
Or while under
Yeah.
attack, under pressure.
Well,
That's how they need to generate that. And that's all signals based intelligence. Right?
I'll do you a solid CIG and I'll qualify that. You want to know the best way to make that a reality too, to stack up on that and to earn a little cash? You make ships like the Terrapin the one that's the most capable, or, a brand new ship, the one that's the most capable at picking up that quantum dampener. I mean, but that's how you get to that gameplay. That's kind of how you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's what makes sense. You need like a counter to that. You don't want it to just be literally like, oh, my Avenger Titan is here and I can pick up that quantum dampener going off on radar, or whatever medium you're collecting the data with. But let's say I'm in a Terrapin and it's like, oh man, that's like a Christmas tree over there. That is who we're going after.
And it has a unique signature.
They pulled their trigger. Yeah. I got it. But it just there should be range dictations based on who's got a radar that's capable, looking for that stuff. Things like that.
If you're not the right ship or vehicle for the job, if you're looking for people doing that sort of stuff, you want to have somebody in your team who's doing that in order to, direct you in the right transfer the information and be like, hey, this just went off here, you guys go and get it, but I just detected it,
and that's the key point, Tree. You're hitting the nail on the head. They have to be able to take that information, transfer it to their friends, and then they can jump to it.
Yep.
And then you can interdict the interdictors, and you can generate that PvP combat. And the same goes for NPCs, right? Because every now and again, you'll get quantum interdicted by NPCs. And a player who's looking for that gameplay will see that interdiction, and they can then jump to your location, and they can reinforce you, and they can take out those pirates.
Yep.
And then you add that game loop in. But if you can't detect it, right? If you don't implement that detectability for when that pulse goes off, and then the subsequent enforcement, which is a crap ton energy, right, being emitted to hold a ship in place, right, you're never going to get there. So those are the things that need to happen for that particular scenario.
Yep, for sure. Well, I'm going to wrap us
I'll
up for
stop
this
there,
evening.
Tree. I love you.
It's okay. No, it's all good stuff, but it's also a very deep topic, and CIG is literally just scratching the surface with what they've shown us that they've been working on developing, and how it ties into other things that they're working on, like the resource network and engineering gameplay. So there's a lot to unpack from that, but I wanted to tie that in with what we were talking about earlier, because I do think it's a holistic, complementary system. It's a circle. But so that's going to be it for this episode. Before everybody takes off and logs off, I do want to make sure we raid somebody, because we still have a lot of people hanging out in chat. So if you guys,
are you going to talk about next week or no?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. But
not next
I wanted
week,
to
but
get
the next
people
time.
looking for someone for us to raid while we're talking. So if you have suggestions, throw them in chat, and we'll raid somebody. Find a streamer that you think is deserving of a really solid raid from this stellar group of people in chat hanging out with us. Really appreciate all the follows, and super bottom of my heart, big long distance hugs for the donations and the subs. So thank you so much, guys.
Yeah.
But so the next episode that we're already started planning and brainstorming is we're looking, because CIG has been talking about the weapons rebalancing that they're I guess talking about, working on, and so we wanted to bring that up and talk about what they have mentioned, but also it mentioned publicly, but also what our thoughts are, is what we would like to see going forward from CIG, as far as where should they go with this weapons rebalance. And so with what we normally do, we do 2 parts of an episode. What we're thinking is, for the first part of the episode is we'll talk about guns, and energy weapons, ballistics, all that, and then the second part of the episode we'll talk about missiles and torpedoes, and we'll talk about just ordnance in general. And so I already had Badgers reach out to us, and so he's really interested on coming on, and being that he say warfare officer, right?
He's a nav.
Nav guy. I think
He's a navigator. Surface warfare.
I think it'd be really good to have him on for that next episode.
That means he was a department head on a surface ship.
Yeah.
We have navigators on submarines.
I jump out the back in a little rubber boat, or I take off from a flight deck. So yeah. But
he's a big
Badgers
deal.
Badgers is a
He's
friend.
like a Tira.
Yeah. Oh God. But he's also really entertaining, and he's a part of the Info Runners. So if you're not aware of them, go check them out.
I was laughing at the rubber boat category.
Yeah.
I was laughing at the rubber boat comment. Not that he's a big deal. I'm sure he's a big deal.
Is that I'm
I
a
said he's a
Zodiac
big
writer.
deal, like a Tira.
So we are hoping to do that episode in early May. We generally try and do about 1 a month, just because we're all busy people and it's hard to get our schedules lined up with different commitments and stuff. So stay tuned for that. If you're not a part of my Discord, I heartily encourage you to join my Discord if you use Discord, and it's just discord.gg/tree0311. The link is on
in just a second.
Yeah, and the link is on my Twitch. Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a little lore stream looking at the March Galactopedia update. And whenever I do those, I try and relate the lore articles to gameplay aspects like we've been talking about. Whether they're things that we have already, things in development, things that are planned. So please drop by for that. No Pathfinders this week, because this next week we'll have the monthly reports come on Wednesday. So we'll be reading those the following Monday. But again, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming and hanging out and being a part of the discussion. Hope to hear from you and see you guys again soon. And Night Cobb and Atira, thanks again so much, guys. I really appreciate both of you being a part of this and helping us be successful in our mission to help the military members and veterans via Stack Up. So I'll let you guys, if you guys have any final thoughts before we sign off, please do.
Follow Atira on YouTube. Entry.
Oh, thank you. Yes,
And-
absolutely.
oh, yeah.
And
Entry.
Twitch.
I'll give a professional thing. Planning is the this is Night Cobb. Planning is the primary game loop. Part of
I
planning.
stole that from Paul. You can't even credit me on that.
Are you claiming that from Paul? All right, so Paul.
Yeah, I stole it from
planning.
Paul.
There you go.
Oh, I thought Paul
I
stole
think
it
it's
from you.
I think it's a fantastic.
I would love to
mantra.
earn that credit, but no.
Oh,
No,
I
it's a fantastic mantra, and I will triple down on it always. So part of that planning is collection. Part of that planning is understanding how you hide and scan down somebody, which is what we talked about earlier. Part of that time is how you collect on people. So, absolutely key. Planning is the primary game loop.
yeah.
Follow us
that's all
all
we
on
have.
YouTube. Follow
That's all
Night
we have for
Cobb on
this
YouTube.
evening.
I know he doesn't want you to,
Oh, yeah.
but follow Night Cobb.
God, I make the
Oh,
shittiest YouTube videos. It's not even funny.
Follow him. Do
Ammo's
it.
a great
Follow me
a great
too.
org as well. So
Follow
if you're
Tree.
looking for an org with some fun people, I would be an Ammo if I had the time. You know, I do not. So yeah, if you're looking for a fun org and fun people, Night Cobb and Atira are both in Ammo. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
We
Go
love
Seven's
how
all
pleased
around.
the citizen when
I'm
we
okay
can
with people
log in.
following me on Twitch. I'm way better live. Record myself and it's like, oh God, I can't even watch this. I'm so cringe. Don't.
Oh, we had a great video, just you and me.
Oh no,
doing
I'm
some
better on your
salvage.
videos.
It was fantastic.
No,
It
I'm
was
better
great.
on your videos because I just shit on you the whole time and provide you all the
God,
snark
he is
that I've
such
got
a
in my
snarky
my
asshole.
wee little heart.
It's nonstop. I swear.
Yeah.
You gotta
Watch
raid. So
watch YouTube
it's-
videos of his with me, not my own. God, not my own. Yeah, raid somebody for love of fuck.
Yeah,
Somebody
let's go.
soon.
Raid him. Let's
All
go. Who are we raiding?
we're gonna raid Ender because Star Jump raided me the other night when we were doing Pathfinder. So we're gonna return the favor. Star Jump Ender is playing Star Citizen. We're gonna go give them a raid. If you
Hell yeah.
let's see. So I click it and then I click Start Raid, right? Or do I have to wait? Okay,
There you go.
There we go.
You got it going.
Star Jump just released their Star Jump Shipyard, the second video, which is on the Endeavor. So go check that out. Came out really well. It's the second one. The first one was the Kraken. So pretty awesome videos. All right, looks like everybody, 56 raiders are ready to raid. Send it. Cheers. 07.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.